I said, this like almost 2 months. I said, no, I'm scheduling to get it. I hadn't had it. And he goes, everybody freeze.
Ready.
All right, we're about ready to start the beer board. It's now approximately 10 minutes till 6. I'm now going to call the Farragut Beer Board for June 10th, 2021 to order. You want to check for a quorum?
Yes.
We have all 4.
Alderman Pinchuk. Evelyn.
Here.
Alderman Burnett.
Here.
Alderman Meyer.
Here.
First item on the agenda is approval of minutes. Has the members of the beer board had a chance to review the minutes? And
Move to approve.
Second.
And no other questions or comments? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approval of minutes has been approved. Next item, beer permit request. It's approval of a Class 6 special occasion beer permit for the Farragut Business Alliance Music Fest at West End on July 9th through the 10th, 2021.
Yes, sir. This is Music Fest that the Farragut Business Alliance does annually. They are asking that their $100 fee be waived at this time, and they are also asking for a special event beer permit for that event. As you just stated, it'll be July 9th through the 10th, 2021.
I'm going to
Everything that they have is in order.
move to approve.
Second.
Okay, do we have a representative? Steve, you want to come up to the podium?
Steve Krempaski, 404 Justice Valley Street, Farragut. And I'm the Executive Director of the Farragut Business Alliance. Hope everybody's shopping Farragut. And we hope that we bring some attention to West End Shopping Center with this event.
Any changes this year? What can we expect?
More vendors, great
Good.
music, lots of fun. And some new merchants, too. If people haven't made it over to West End Shopping Center, got several new businesses opening over there this past year. So
Great.
come out, post-COVID, no masks.
Ready to have fun.
Any questions or comments?
No, sir.
All right, time for a vote?
Do you want to do roll call?
Yes.
Okay. Vice Mayor Pavlin,
Yes.
Alderman Burnett,
Yes.
Alderman Meyer,
Yes.
Alderman Pinchuk.
Yes. All right, it's approved. Next item on the agenda is approval of a Class 6 special occasion beer permit for the Farragut Business Alliance Dog Days 5, Friday, August 13th through the 15th, 2021.
To approve.
I'm sorry.
Steve?
I'll let you second.
Dog Days is over at Village Green Shopping Center, and the difference is, rather than music, we've got about 60 dogs jumping in the swimming pool at Village Green Shopping Center, August 13, 14, and 15. From what they tell me at Smoky Mountain Dock Dogs, they're already sold out of all the registrations, and the beer permit just helps the patrons enjoy a free weekend of fun at this event.
Steve, how busy is this event? I mean, is it close to growing out of that parking lot? I mean, it seems like every year it's getting a little bigger and bigger.
Well, that's the plan. I think this year will be especially good, and unfortunately, Steinmart's going to allow us to have more parking. So we'll have a full parking lot, and we'll have about 40 vendors there, everything from home improvement to doggy biscuits. So come on out, because it's a shopping experience, and we want people to come out to see what's happening at Village Green Shopping Center.
Thank you, Steve.
Any other comments or questions? All right. Vote?
Alderman Burnett,
Yes.
Alderman Meyer,
Yes.
Alderman Pinchuk. Yes. Vice Mayor Pavlin.
Yes.
All right, is there any other business for the beer board?
There is none.
All right, then we are adjourned. Can we close that door?
Allison's going to read it in.
We will before the meeting, or I'll go out there and talk to him.
and one's for the kids.
Okay. Start.
Comment.
All right,
Oh,
the
on
time
the,
is approximately 6 PM, and the June 10th, 2021 Farragut Board of Mayor and Aldermen will now come to order. I'm Vice Mayor Louise Pavla, and I will be officiating tonight's meeting in Mayor Williams' absence. Tonight, we are finally back to our normal meeting place. Thank you. This is really nice to be back here.
Did I not print off that?
We also are meeting at the new 6 PM start time for the Board of Mayor and Aldermen meeting. All Board of Mayor and Aldermen meetings are publicly noticed per Tennessee state law. Our meetings can be seen live on Charter Channel 193 and TDS Channel 3, as well as on the Farragut YouTube channel and our website, www.townoffarragut.org/livestream. It will also be recorded and can be viewed later on the Town of Farragut YouTube channel, as well as Charter Channel 193 and TDS Channel 3. During the regular posted agenda, all comments or questions from Farragut residents will now be in person. If you are interested in speaking, we ask that you fill out a blue card with your name and address and agenda number. I believe those are at the back
Yes,
on the
they're
table
right
back
outside
there.
the front door.
Right outside the front door. And turn it into the town recorder, Allison, prior to the start of the meeting. The vice mayor will maintain and control the meeting to provide a professional and objective environment, so please read the posted comment protocol and understand that there will be a 5-minute limit for each speaker. At the end of tonight's business meeting, there will be some time reserved for public comment under the Citizen Forum agenda, in which the same rules apply as a regular posted agenda item. We will start the night with a silent prayer, which will be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance to our country's flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I will now ask the town recorder to please take attendance roll call for a quorum.
Alderman Burnett.
Here.
Alderman Meyer.
Here.
Alderman Pinchuk.
Here.
Alderman Povlin.
Here.
And Mayor Williams is absent.
Thank you, Allison. Next item is approval of the agenda. Do we have any amendments?
No, ma'am.
All right. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Let the record show that the June 10th, 2021 agenda has been approved. Approval of the minutes. I will now ask for a motion to approve the May 27, 2021 minutes as presented.
So
Move
moved.
for approval.
Who are you writing down?
It doesn't matter. Oh, wow.
Second?
Second.
All in favor of approval, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Let the record show that the May 27, 2021 meeting minutes have been approved and will be recorded as the official minutes of that meeting. Moving on to the mayor's report, I would like to congratulate Coach Mcphee and the 2021 Farragut High School Championship softball team, who are in our audience, for their amazing season. We are so proud that you are here and that we get to celebrate you. I'm going to read in the resolution, but I'm going to have Alderman Burnett go over some of the many successes that you all had.
Go ahead and grab them.
Hear this, right?
Yeah, y'all can pile on in.
Come on in, ladies. And congratulations.
Well, welcome Farragut High School softball team, and congratulations on a state championship. That doesn't come easy, and we know there was a lot of work that was put into that. So I'm going to start off just by reading aloud some personal accolades from some of the ladies on the team, and then I'll pass it over to the vice mayor for the proclamation. So the District 4 AAA Coach of the Year, Nick Green. Judy Siebert and Megan Carr as well. Then we'd like to go for the District 4 AAA Player of the Year, Cameron Young. District 4A Pitcher of the Year, Avery Flatford. And we'll recognize all 4 AAA honorees, Lauren Brakovich, Avery A. Strickland, Ava Guzawiski. That's pretty close. And honorable mentions, all 4 AAA members, Hannah Pfeiffer and Sarah Livingston.
You're ready? So I'm going to read the proclamation in. Whereas the Farragut High School Lady Admirals softball team became the 2021 state champions, winning the TSSAA state tournament held at Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and whereas the Farragut High School Lady Admirals softball team finished the regular season with a record of 37 wins and only 2 losses, and whereas the Farragut High School Lady Admirals softball team has also supported one another, demonstrated courage and determination, oh, you're going to make me cry on this one, exhibited volunteerism within the Farragut community while maintaining their academic responsibilities, and whereas Coach Nick Green showed hard work and dedication to the sport of softball and named District 4 AAA Coach of the Year, and now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Mayor and Aldermen declared June 11th, 2021 as Lady Admirals Softball Day in the town of Farragut, and do hereby wish to extend their congratulations to the Farragut High School Ladies Admirals softball team for winning the TSSAA State Softball Championship. We'd like to get a picture with you.
Congratulations. Great season. Great season, ladies.
That's a first.
Realize that
Ready to move on?
When I went southern, so girl had a favorite softball shirt on.
I'm just glad you wrote it.
All right, moving on to ordinances. We have a total of 3 ordinances to review with public hearing tonight. The first 2 will be for second reading. I will ask for a roll call vote on all ordinances. The first 2 ordinances to review with public hearing tonight will be on second reading. Ordinance 21-08, an ordinance to amend the Farragut Municipal Code, Appendix A, Zoning, Chapter 4, Section I, Accessory Structures and Uses, Subsection B, and Chapter 4, Section 23, Site Plan Regulations, Subsection C6R, to address the screening requirements for below-grade refuse collection and recycling systems.
Yes, good evening, this is Mark Shipley. Good to be back live, I guess. It's different. But anyway, this is a second reading on an ordinance amendment to the zoning ordinance dealing with garbage dumpsters that are partially below grade. So in working with the Planning Commission, we came up with screening requirements for these shorter dumpsters. We don't have any currently in the town. We may have some in the future, hopefully. But what they worked out was basically to screen them just like you would traditional dumpsters, but the front could be left open as long as it doesn't face outward, so if it faces internally. So that's basically what the screening requirements ended up being, and that are reflected in Ordinance 21-08. The Planning Commission did unanimously recommend approval of this ordinance at their meeting in April, and the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, at your all's meeting on May 27th, you did approve this on first reading unanimously. There have been no changes to this ordinance since first reading, so the staff does recommend approval of Ordinance 21-08 on second reading.
Can I get a motion?
Move to approve.
Second?
Do we have any public input on this, Mark?
I doubt it.
I don't think on this one.
And then I'll move on to discussion. Alderman Meyer,
Pass.
Alderman Burnett,
I'll pass.
Pinchuk.
Pass.
I have nothing either. So with a motion and second on the floor, I will ask the town recorder to take a roll call vote, please. Not town
Alderman
recorder, Mark.
Burnett,
Yes.
Alderman Meyer,
Yes.
Alderman Pinchuk,
Yes.
Alderman Pavlin.
Yes. Let the record show that ordinance 21-08 to amend the Farragut Municipal Code has been approved on second reading with a vote of 4-0. The next one is ordinance 21-13, ordinance of the Town of Farragut, Tennessee, adopting the annual budget for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2021, and ending June 30th, 2022.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I always joke every year that this is the most important decision the board makes, and we never have a crowd, but this year it's changed. I don't know if they're here for this item, but certainly it's a very important item that our board works on for months and months and months throughout the year, getting our budget prepared for the next fiscal year. This is second reading. The only changes, and I'll go over them briefly, in the general fund is we anticipate revenue of $12.258 million in FY 2022, with general fund expenditures at $8,150,132. The amount from first reading did increase by $1,000, and that is to include additional monies for school support at the request of the Farragut Education Committee. At the end of fiscal year '22, we project that we will have $4.1 million in revenue over expenditures. We will also be able to fund our rainy day fund at a total of $2.445 million, and we project an available fund balance at the end of FY 2022 to be $19.2 million. With the board's approval of the budget tonight, you'll also be approving the State Street Aid Fund, the Tourism Fund, the Equipment Replacement Fund, the ADA Capital Projects Fund, the Capital Investment Program Fund, and the Insurance Fund. No funding in those funds has changed from first reading. And the motion is to approve Ordinance 21-13 on second reading, and I'm happy to try to answer any questions if the board has any.
I'll ask for a motion.
Approve.
Second.
Do we have any resident input for this item?
No, ma'am.
Would we like move to discussion? Alderman Burnett?
I'm very excited about this budget. I feel like we've got a lot of boxes checked off that we wanted checked off, from stormwater to parks to greenway connections.
Yep.
I have one question. So for the education committee, that $1,000, is that enough? I mean, should we throw a little bit more money in there?
I just took a stab at it, thinking that we would, when we handed out the bagels for that, I don't know how
love
much
it.
that was, but we were thinking about maybe doing that 2 times this time, I guess in the spring and in the fall and in the springtime, an opportunity to do that. But also, we're hosting a luncheon in August with the principals and the headmasters of the private schools. So I think that should cover it for this year. I don't know what else we would want to start small.
Okay,
And so I think that covers it.
okay. I
Yeah.
just thought it was small, but if you're good with it, I'm good.
I appreciate that, though.
Yeah.
Sorry, I keep forgetting I'm running the meeting. Alderman Pinchuk?
I'm just excited as well about approving this budget, so I have no further questions or comments.
Alderman Meyer?
So I'm also very pleased with the budget. Just one question, because I was not at the last meeting. Can you remind me, the $250,000 for the Campbell Station and improvements, that's just a ballpark, and that we're going to meet subsequently to discuss what we think the Campbell Station will actually be used for? So
Yeah.
therefore, it could be more, it could be less, we don't know yet, but
And we also moved that out to the 2023
Okay.
budget year, so it's more of a planning year, not an
Okay.
actual budget year for next year, to give
Okay.
us that time to review and exactly, to figure out exactly what you want to do with
Okay.
the inside of the building.
awesome. No further questions, thank you.
Okay, and I just have one point, only because I know that the residents from that there's residents from the farm at Willow Creek here, that in many of the, we're funding a lot of connections, and we're finally funding the Evans Road Greenway connection. In 2022, we are funding the land, right-of-way, and design and engineering, and in 2023, we envision funding the construction. So that'll connect from the farm at Willow Creek out to Price Farm, and finally make that connection, a full connection for you all on Evans Road. So we're really excited about, there's a lot more other connections in the budget, but that was the one I wanted to highlight for you all. So with that, I have a motion and a second on the floor. I will ask the town, I'm sorry, didn't take a vote yet. A roll call vote, sorry.
Alderman Meyer.
Yes.
Alderman Pinchuk.
Yes.
Alderman Povlin.
Yes.
Alderman Burnett.
Yes.
Let the record show that ordinance 21-13 adopting the annual budget for fiscal year 2022 has been approved on second reading by a vote of 4-0. The next ordinance to review tonight will be on the first reading. Ordinance 2109, an ordinance to amend the Farragut Municipal Code Appendix A, Zoning, Chapter 3, Section 4, Open Space Mixed Residential, OSMR, to require a concept plan in association with a rezoning request to establish the distribution of attached versus detached dwelling units. Town of Farragut applicant.
Yeah. Okay, a little bit of background on this. This really came about, when we reviewed this with the Planning Commission. As you all know, there's a couple of properties that were requested for rezoning to OSMR. It's open space mixed residential. And during the process of reviewing that, both the Planning Commission and the Board of Mayor and Aldermen had some concerns about rezoning properties to that district, because it does provide for both attached and detached dwelling units. And a specific concern was that if a piece of property was rezoned to OSMR, potentially the whole development could be attached, and that could be out of character with the surrounding plan of development. So the staff ended up proposing that we consider a concept plan as part of a rezoning request to OSMR. And the purpose of that would be to establish, before a property is rezoned, the distribution and general location of attached versus detached in a development. And then it could be reviewed in terms of whether it's appropriate to be rezoned to that district, given the surrounding context. So concept plans are currently required for OSR and OSMR districts, but it's not until the property's already rezoned at the subdivision review process. So what we're proposing that's in Ordinance 21-09 is to include a concept master plan as part of a rezoning request to OSMR. We reviewed this with the Planning Commission. First of all, I asked them at a workshop session if they thought that was a good idea, and everybody thought it was a great idea to do this, so that there's some understanding of how this property may end up being developed. So one of the things that we also talked about was to, what level of detail will we need in a concept plan, because they don't know that the property's going to get rezoned, so we don't want to be overly burdensome, but we also don't want to not have enough information, and then they basically throw something on paper that's not really buildable. So what we did was we looked at the concept plan requirements that are in the subdivision regulations, and basically pulled out most of those to include in the rezoning process. And when we talked with the Planning Commission about this, we do have a developer that's on the Planning Commission, and he said everything was very reasonable in terms of what would be expected as far as the level of detail, and was very comfortable with that. So I think that that what we have in there is going to provide a little bit more certainty if there are other properties that come up for that zoning district in the future. So the Planning Commission did unanimously recommend approval of Ordinance 21-09 at their meeting on May 20th, and staff recommends approval of Ordinance 21-09 on first reading.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Do we have any resident input on this?
Don't believe so, no.
Okay, so we'll move on to discussion. Alderman Pinchak?
I'm excited that we're doing this. I think it's good to protect ourselves from what could possibly happen if we don't have this kind of information up front, so I'm all for it.
Meyer?
I definitely support it. I like the flexibility that OSMR provides developers. But with that being said, so much flexibility, it's nice for us to know ahead of time what we're getting into. So I think it's very important that we approve this.
Alderman Burnett?
Yeah, I'm very much for it, and I'm glad we're putting this in. Mark? Hey, Mark.
Hey, yeah,
When
sorry.
you look at the concept plan requirements, and they submit something that has a mix of attached and detached, what then are they held to? Is it of like-kind housing can't go up to, X percentage in number or quantity of that type of housing, or do we hold them to what they present? Obviously, there's got to be flexibility because it's not been
Yeah,
rezoned.
because, yes, that's true. The concept plan is not generally going to have enough level of detail to know. There's going to be some adjustments that could
Right.
be made. I think the intent is to get a general representation of how someone envisions developing the property. And I think if what ultimately gets proposed at the subdivision stage is, reasonably consistent with what they presented during the rezoning, I think it would be fine. What you're trying to do is get a general, like when you all approved the rezoning for the Grove, the Schubert
yeah.
property, we capped it at 100 attached units. So you can do that, but I think the concept plan just gives you kind of a drawing, a visual indication of they've looked at the property.
Yeah.
Hopefully somebody that's developing a piece of property kind of has a general idea of how they want it to develop, and they've looked at the property, its physical characteristics, to understand what would be reasonable, would be marketable, wouldn't be a huge cost in terms of grading. I think that's there is going to have to be a little bit of flexibility.
Right.
As long as it's reasonably consistent with what was presented during the rezoning process, the staff would be comfortable with that.
What's the safeguard on the final submission? So if somebody's looking at a piece of property, they think it's a long shot to get rezoned, they submit something that's potentially not realistic, but they don't want to put a ton of time into it, but then it comes back to the final submission and it's very different. What's our security measure to make sure that so it still comes back to the board?
Yeah, I mean, if somebody gets a property rezoned and then when they get to the subdivision stage and they present a concept that's very different from that, then the Planning Commission should just deny it.
Okay.
Now, they could come back and present a concept that's generally consistent with what they presented during the rezoning, and that'd be fine. But the
Right.
Planning Commission would have the ability to say, well, this is not consistent with what was, not remotely consistent with what was presented during the rezoning process, so we can't support this concept.
Yep.
I think what you're looking for is to interrupt you,
Okay.
you're looking for this to go back to the board if it's a significant change.
Yes.
Is there language we can put in that would require that? If
Well,
this-
the thing is, they can't get any further with the development if they end up proposing something that is very different from the concept that was presented during the rezoning. They'll either have to change the concept to be more consistent with the rezoning, or they'll have to to, come back and rezone it to something different, which would come through you all ultimately.
I think what Alderman Burnett is getting at is, it sounds like if they come back with something significantly different, the planning commission could make the ultimate decision to say, okay, it's significantly different, but we're okay with it. And what he's asking is that if it's significantly different, that it should go back to the board for, it's kind of like what the planned commercial development
Yeah.
is what we
Yeah.
require.
Okay.
Is it?
Minor versus major changes?
Yes.
Like to have some kind of section like that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Can
We
we-
could go back and look at that.
Yeah.
Sure.
Can we amend the
Yeah.
motion to
Yeah.
include that, and then on second reading, we'll have that language?
That sounds great.
So I need,
Great.
Alderman
Okay.
Meyer, I need you to
I amend my motion to include a
stipulation.
stipulation for a significant change from the original plan to be presented to BOMA for approval.
And you seconded.
I'll second it.
Feel comfortable with that?
I'm
I'm
That was a
with
good
you on
comment.
that.
That was very
And
good.
I think that was a good comment, and I have nothing else to add to that.
Okay.
So with a motion and second on the floor, I will ask Mark for a roll call vote, please.
Alderman Pinchot,
Yes.
Alderman Pavlin,
Yes.
Alderman Burnett.
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry, who?
Alderman Meyer made the motion, and Alderman Pinchot seconded it.
Okay.
So let the record show that the amended ordinance 2109 to amend the Farragut Municipal Code has been approved on the first reading by a 4-0 vote. Moving on to the next thing. Okay. Business items. We have 8 business items on tonight's agenda. The first item is the appeal of the concept plan approval for the Grove at Boyd Station subdivision. I will hand this over to Tom Hale, our town attorney, and then to Mark Shipley, our community development director.
Thank you. Is your lawyer late?
He is late, and I would ask for some grace. He was at MPC.
Yeah, he was downtown today at MPC, and he wasn't sure. He thought he'd be finished, but you never know.
Moving it up earlier, I know he was nervous, and Robert Campbell was very nervous. He had a prior commitment as well, and he was going to be pressed to make it.
Mr. Williams, can you just stand,
Okay
so,
with that.
because we're going to have to probably amend the agenda, and I want to make sure that we're doing that properly.
So we would just need to amend the agenda if the board's okay, and you could move this item to the last business item on the agenda for now and vote on that, and then we can just move on to business item B.
Yeah.
Okay,
Sorry.
so I need to move to amend, I need a second.
I'll second.
All those in favor, I need a roll call for that?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank
All
you.
right, we're going to move along to, bear with me because I'm slow on the uptake here. Get this out of the way.
BIB.
B, approval of bids for contract 2022-01, annual on-call road maintenance.
Good evening, Board. I'm Brandon Tupper, the Assistant Town Engineer. I'll be presenting this agenda item in the next handful here. I'll get the background for these bids and then go through each of the contracts one by one. So each year we advertise for bid proposals for the maintenance of our streets. Proposals are obtained for the various line items we typically see during the given year, and we recommend awarding to a contractor based upon their unit prices as well as their responsiveness if they've completed this contract in the past and their ability to perform the work. The first contract we have is 2022-01 Annual On-Call Road Maintenance. We received one bid on May 20th from Pavement Restorations Incorporated, better known as PRI. We've attached our bid tabulation, and based on unit prices, along with the unit prices of the current contract, based upon these, staff recommends award of the contract to Pavement Restorations Incorporated. The town has worked with PRI in the past, and we've always been pleased with their work.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Do we have any public input? Discussion, Alderman Meyer,
Pass.
Alderman Burnett,
Pass.
Alderman Pinchot.
Pass.
I have nothing either, so all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Let the record show that contract 2022-01 has been awarded to Pavement Restoration Incorporation. Item C is approval of bids, contract 2022-02, annual on-call pavement marking.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. The similar background to the last one, we put this out for bid as well. So this is contract 2022-02, annual on-call pavement marking. We received one bid on May 20th from Volunteer Highway Supply Company Incorporated. We have attached the bid tabulation for Volunteer Highway Supplies unit prices, along with the current year unit prices. Based upon the unit prices and their past performance, we've worked with this contractor before. Staff recommends award of the contract to Volunteer Highway Supply.
Do I have a motion to approve?
Move for approval.
Second.
Public input? Discussion? Alderman Pinchak?
None.
Alderman Meyer?
Pass.
Alderman Burnett?
Pass.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Let the record show that contract 2022-02 has been awarded to Volunteer Highway Supply. Item C? Am I at C or D? I'm at D. Sorry. Approval of bids for contract 2022-03, annual on-call guardrail maintenance.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Similarly, this contract was also put out for bid at the same time. This is contract 2022-03, annual on-call guardrail maintenance. We received two bids on May 20th from Tennessee Guardrail Incorporated and Roadway Solutions LLC. Based upon the tabulated unit prices, staff recommends award of contract 2022-03 to Roadway Solutions LLC. Roadway Solutions has been our contractor for the past several years, and we've always enjoyed a good working relationship.
I need a motion to approve.
Move for approval.
Second.
Public input?
No, ma'am.
Discussion? Alderman Burnett?
Pass.
Alderman Pinchak?
Pass.
Alderman Meyer?
Pass.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Let the record show that contract 2022-03 has been awarded to Roadway Solutions LLC. Item E, approval of bids for contract 2022-04, annual on-call signal maintenance.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Similarly, we also put this contract out for bid at the same time. This is contract 2022-04, annual on-call signal maintenance contract. We received two bid proposals on May 20th from Progression Electric LLC and Stansel Electric Company Incorporated. We've attached a bid tabulation of unit prices for both companies. Based upon the tabulated prices, staff recommends award of the contract to Stansel Electric Company. The town has recently contracted with Stansel on other projects, and we're pleased with their performance.
I need a motion to approve.
Move for approval.
Second.
Public input,
No, ma'am.
discussion. Alderman Meyer?
Pass.
Alderman Burnett?
Pass.
Alderman Pinchak?
Pass.
All in favor of the motion, say aye. Any opposed? Let the record show that contract 2022-04 has been awarded to Stansel Electric Company. Item F, approval of change order number 8, contract 2020-12, Mcphee Park Phase 3.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. The next two agenda items will both be related to Mcphee Park. I will read the background to the park. The Board of Mayor and Aldermen awarded contract 2020-12 to Merit Construction Incorporated on March 12, 2020 for a total lump sum contract price of $7,385,000. The project consists of a major park expansion, including a great lawn, tennis complex, restroom pavilion, entrance roads, and parking. Specific to this agenda item, this is approval of change order number 8 for contract 2020-12 Mcphee Park Phase 3. The contract includes a provision for weather delays, which allows for the contractor to submit for additional schedule if the project is impacted. Each month, the amount of actual rainout days is compared to historical data from the area and evaluated. Merit has submitted for 30 days above the historical data baseline from April 20th through May 21st. That's the full duration of the project from award through current date. This has been reviewed by Ross Fowler's design team and the town staff, and we concur with their request. Please note this is a $0 change and only provides for schedule relief from the contractually required completion date. The new completion date would be June 22nd, 2021. Staff recommends approval of change order number 8 for contract 2020-12 Mcphee Park Phase 3.
Motion to approve.
Move for approval.
Second.
Do we have any public input?
No, ma'am.
Discussion? Alderman Burnett?
I'd say 30 days over 12 months is pretty good, so I'm good with it.
Alderman Pinchak,
Pass.
Alderman Meyer.
These are my favorite change orders because they don't cost us anything.
Of course.
So you have my full support.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Let the record show that change order 8 on contract 2020-12 has been approved. Next, item G, approval of change proposal number 28, contract 2020-12, Mcphee Park Phase 3.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. This change proposal is for the same project, and this one does have a cost associated with it. An electrical equipment rack with circuit breaker panel and independent disconnects has not been provided with the alternate 2 design. This is a requirement to meet electrical code and to provide a safe means of controlling and maintaining the tennis court and the parking lot lights. 2 options have been designed by the Ross Fowler design team, and the proposals are attached. The first proposal is for $17,951 and provides an equipment rack to power the Musco tennis lights, alternate 2 parking lights, and also provides additional space for future lights for the basketball court or any future courts. Future space meaning empty space on the breaker panel and option to add additional disconnects for any future electrical. The second proposal is for $9,010. Provides an equipment rack to power the Musco tennis lights and the alternate 2 parking lights. However, it would not provide that additional space for any additional lights that were added at a later time. And if the board did so choose to add lights at a later time, at that point, an additional equipment rack and breaker panel and everything would need to be added. The total cost for the change proposal is $17,951, and they've requested a 6-day contract extension.
Do I have any public input on this?
No, ma'am.
I'm sorry, I didn't get a motion,
I
sorry.
move for approval of change proposal 28 for $17,951 for contract 2020-12 Mcphee Park Phase 3.
Second.
Do I have any public input?
No, ma'am.
How about discussion? Alderman Meyer.
My only question is, how much have we incurred so far in change orders for Mcphee Park? I should have gave you that question ahead of time.
Yeah, I don't know, Alderman, if we have that number off the top of our
Okay.
heads, but certainly,
I think we're under the threshold.
We still have 90,000 left after
we have
this.
$90,000 available still
Yeah,
in the
but
budget.
I got that, but I don't like change orders, so I'm just curious how much have we incurred in change orders?
I'm trying to think of it.
Well, actually, if you take the 7,385 million versus the 90,000 you have left, that'll give you the number. You know, we added a major part of
okay.
the park project with the basketball court and that addition after the initial bid. So that was the biggest change order that we had, that whole complex.
Okay. Okay. And I guess we're going to be optimistic that there'll be future tennis courts that will need to be lighting at some point. Okay.
Alderman Burnett. Alderman Pinchak.
I'm going to bite my tongue. I just still can't figure out why this was overlooked. Ross Fowler, I think, should have been on top of this, but no further comment.
It's a big project. I don't have any comment either. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Let the record show that change proposal number 28 on contract 2020-12 has been approved. Are we ready to head back to the first item? First business item. Is Mr. Williams in the room?
Actually, we could go ahead and do committee appointments if you'd
Oh,
like.
sorry, I apologize.
do that.
That would help. Approval of the fiscal year 2022 committee appointments.
All right, the first one is the Arts and Beautification Committee. Our board member will be Ron Williams. 2-year appointments, Marion McGill, Janelle Koskiko, Brenda Seals, Betty Newby, Michelle Baker, and Annie Judkins. Plumbing, Gas, Mechanical, 3-year appointment is Kenny Scramblin and Stephen Bird. 2-year appointment is Stephen Sloan. Board of Zoning Appeals is Scott Meyer. Education Relations Committee, Janet Morgan. Museum Advisory Board, Ron Williams will be our board appointee. 2-year appointments are Steve Stowe, Todd Kepler, Dot LaMarche, Sue Ann Hansler, and Henry Bird. 1-year appointments, Bill Battle, Lisa Hall, and Jonelle. The Tourism Committee, the board appointee will be Ron Pinchak. The Attractions Representative will be Daryl Whitehead. Retail is Julie Blaylock. The at-large members for 2 years, Miriam McGill and Deborah Pinchak. one-year appointments are Wendy Robinson, Nicholas Blair, and Riley Honkin. Parks and Athletics Council, these are all two-year appointments from Jeff Julian, Yvonne Tharp, Mark Geller, Scott Russ, Randy Armstrong, and Riley Honkin. Stormwater Advisory Committee at large, Jennifer Mayfield and Kwahi. PE is Violet Friedenberg. Visual Resources Review Board is Marty Lehman, Jeannie Stowe, Randy Armstrong, and Stephen Marlowe. And on the Tourism Committee, we are assigning the lodging rep to be Alex Bacta.
Do I have a motion?
For approval?
I assume we don't have any public input. Any discussion? Alderman Burnett?
Pass.
Alderman Pinchuk?
Pass.
Alderman Meyer?
Pass.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Let the record show that fiscal year 2022 committee appointment list has been approved. Now we are returning back to business item, the first business item. Mr. Williams, are we ready to proceed?
If I could make a presentation, and then I'm going to go ahead and bring forth some of the evidence. Taylor is on his way. He did call me.
The first thing we'll do, first thing we'll do is we'll hear from Tom and we'll hear from staff.
Okay.
And then we'll have a motion, and then you'll have your opportunity to present.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you. What you're called on tonight to do with respect to this matter is to review the action of the Planning Commission in the approval, I think it was on April the 15th, of the concept plan for the proposed subdivision known as the Grove at Boyd Station. Since we're reviewing what the Planning Commission did, then we don't have any set procedure for this, so the thought was that Mr. Shipley should explain actually what they did, so you'll know what they did. And then Mr. Williams, the adjoining property owner, who he has some issues he would like to raise about what the concept plan includes. His property touches the proposed subdivision. Then we'll have the opportunity to hear from others who were involved in the development of this subdivision. And hopefully by the time we get to you, Mr. Williams, your lawyer will be here. Mr. Williams, we've known each other a long time. I'd rather listen to your lawyer than to you. So, and that's not, that's only can be said between friends. So anyway, Mark, if you would explain that, that would be helpful.
Yeah, let me give you a little bit of overview of this and the basis of the action. If you look on the screen, that's the Grove at Boyd Station subdivision proposed. It's at the southwest corner of the town. It's actually southeast intersection of Mcphee and Boyd Station Road for the most part. And what the Planning Commission recommended when they approved the concept plan back in April was, in looking at the overall transportation system, was to stub just a public right-of-way, not a street. It's very important to understand that there's not a street being constructed, just a public right-of-way to the north, because there's a couple of large tracts there that could, in the future, be developed potentially. We've seen a number of farms in the last few years be developed. We've got the Ivy Farm, the Harville Farm, the Gibson Farm, the Smith Farm, and now the Schubert Farm. So it's kind of probably not realistic to think in this part of Knox County that a large piece of property couldn't potentially be developed. So the Planning Commission, in thinking about the future, which is one of their roles, they look at our plan, our adopted comprehensive land use plan for guidance. And one of the things that the plan identified when it was updated in 2012 was that there's a lack of connectivity in our community, and that creates congestion, inefficiency in the overall transportation system. So the Planning Commission actually amended our subdivision regulations in 2018 to require connectivity, because it's a very important thing to think about, because we see the result of not doing that in the past. If every time you drive down Grigsby Chapel Road, there's no other options. Everybody comes out to the same road, don't have anywhere else to go. So what they're trying to do with new developments is to provide people with as many options as you can have, so that you can disperse the traffic throughout a larger system, and you don't end up overloading any one street or street section like Grigsby Chapel Road or Union Road for that matter. You know, Fox Run and Saddle Ridge, huge subdivisions, they all come directly out to Union Road. There aren't any other options. There will be now with Pecos going into to the Ivy Farms, but so that's one important objective of the plan, and one reason why the Planning Commission made this recommendation when they reviewed this in April. Other things, other benefits of having connectivity is that it helps with emergency service providers, and if you're working on a road, you've got other options. So let's think about Sedgefield a few years ago. They had that collapse, and had Sedgefield had only one way in and out, there'd been some problems, some real serious problems. And if somebody, heaven forbid, was having a medical emergency in that subdivision, they could have died because there wasn't any other way to get in there. So it's a very serious thing that we take when we look at connectivity in our community. And you know, looking at large tracts that aren't developed, but that could be, is something the Planning Commission needs to look at, and that's what they did in this case. Let's see, I don't know if you want me to go through, I can kind of review in summary what, there's 4 elements in what was given to us as appeal, and one of them was the stubbed out right-of-way to the north, and that does bisect into basically where 2 properties come together. They're both a little over 21 acres, so you got 42 acres that's stubbing into roughly. And then the second element was traffic impact study discussion, and then the third was the sidewalk walking trail that stubs also within that right-of-way to the north, and then a speed limit question on an internal street to the subdivision. In dealing with to me, there's only 2 that are relevant in this appeal, and that is the road and the walking trail that are stubbing to the north. The other 2, at least in my opinion, aren't relevant to this matter.
Mark, can you make sure we're not having a road there, we have a right-of-way?
I've said that, yes.
Let's make sure
I want
we're...
to be clear
Yeah.
that there's no road proposed, and there may never be a road there. It's really dependent on what could happen to the north and whether that makes sense or not. It may not even make sense. But the Planning Commission has to think about the future. We don't want to have more Grigsby Chapel roads. We've learned that lesson. You know, we don't want to do that again. It's a real problem. So they've stubbed a right-of-way, no physical road proposed now or in the near future. And it may never happen. Like I said, it would depend on what happens to the north. If there is a full-blown subdivision over there at some point in the future, and it makes sense to tie in a street and ultimately go to either Virtue or Evans, then that's something that will be looked at as part of that review. So all they're doing right now is trying to provide for that opportunity should that be necessary at some point in the future or make sense. So that's one of the items that were appealed, that was being appealed. And there was some question about the steepness and the topography. The designer for this subdivision, the Grove at Boyd Station, has demonstrated, it was in your all's packets, that a street can be designed to meet the required grades of the town. That's not really an issue. There's lots of steep streets in our town and this whole part of the country. I mean, look at Rochard, Rochard Boulevard, as you all, that's not flat. And so there's lots of different steep streets in our town, so it can be designed to address that. The walking trail connection, that's something that we've done for years. That's just being consistent with our practice, with our plan, with our subdivision regulations. Those things are required, and the Planning Commission is really kind of bound to look at that, think about it. There's a number of connections associated with this subdivision. There's one that goes to Mcphee, and it goes in between two existing house lots. There's a connection, there's a walking trail all along Boyd Station Road, connections into the property, connections up to the Price Farm, and then a connection over to Virtue Road. And then there's the connection that would be within the right-of-way to the north. So, that's something that is solidly consistent with our plan and past action and with our subdivision regulations. So those two things, they are being appealed. In the staff's view, the Planning Commission acted very consistent with our plan, very consistent with our requirements in our subdivision regulations, which are basically founded in the plan. And with past action. If you remember Meadows on Mcphee subdivision, the Gibson farm, there's a road that stubs to the north and the south, and there's two access points on Mcphee. So these things are common. I mean, it's not really anything that is out of the ordinary. So we're just being consistent. And that's basically an overview of how we got to this point as far as the Planning Commission's action and their basis for what they recommended.
Okay. I'm going to make a motion consistent with what the staff has recommended to deny the appeal of the Planning Commission's approval of the concept plan for the Grove at Boyd Station subdivision. And I'll ask for a second.
I'll second.
So now we will hear from the applicant. Can you state your name and address for the record, please? Thank you.
Taylor Forrester, 1111 North Shore Drive, Suite S700, Knoxville, Tennessee, 37919. Thank you for indulging me on some additional time. I had a Planning Commission meeting downtown that I anticipated would not take very long, and it did. So thank you. So the main issues have been raised by staff in regards to exactly what the appeal is about. What we have is a new concept plan approval known as the Grove at Boyd Station. That's going to consist of right under 300 lots, whether it's lots or made up of condo-style housing. And so what we have where this proposed stub-out is adjoins Mr. Williams' property there. The problem that we have in part is the steep grade that exists there. The road guidelines require the grade to be less than 12%. We're at 16% here. Now, yeah, I don't think there will be any dispute that you could do a lot of cut, you can do a lot of fill to eventually get there and curve the road or do switchback roads, but at what cost to Mr. Williams' track? So what we're being placed with here is we have this very dense development, and we are not objecting to the development. There's no opposition to this development. It's just the connection, the stub out. So the stub out is essentially just existing in the sense of being on a map. There will be no improvements, there will be no gravel, there will be nothing there to indicate this is in fact a stub out. So in the event that Mr. Williams does develop his property and that there is a requirement that he connect and construct a road that connects to this, the onus and the burden is going to be on Mr. Williams to now have to comply and bring in fill to match this grade, whereas this developer was not required to to develop it in a manner that would lessen the burden on Mr. Williams' track in the event that he had to develop in the future. So we'll have proof here today from two professionals in the engineering field. First will be in regards to the steep grade, what the problem is, the only way to do it, and necessarily that's not a good idea. And the second is a traffic engineer that will discuss connectivity, the general purpose of connectivity, and why connectivity through multiple residential subdivisions is not always the best scenario. And I believe a lot of that proof will show in this type of situation that you will alleviate congestion within the internal subdivision streets. But at the end of the day, all of these people are still going to be driving in a certain area, and whether they're cutting through Mr. Williams' track in the event that he has to construct a road or going Boyd Station towards Virtue, all you're doing is displacing the congestion from the subdivision to now it all meeting at a intersection of the public right-of-way there at Evans Road and Virtue, which is not going to be a good scenario, I believe, is what the engineer will testify about. In regards to the developer at the Grove indicating that, this can be designed and, showing some examples of how you would construct this, I would say it's relevant to point out that they also pushed against this. And prior to the concept plan submittal and approval, they were arguing that this road would be, the grade would be way too steep on this and shouldn't have to do this because of the grade and the difficulties associated with it. So in the event that Mr. Williams developed his property, the question is going to be is, first, I guess if the road is required, and then second, who's required to pay for this construction onto the Grove parcel? Because again, it will just be a grass area, and what will that construction entail? I highly doubt it'll just be paving a street. I believe there will be sufficient grading going on, possibly retaining walls that have to be constructed. And again, who's responsible for that? And so we understand that there is an ordinance that suggests connectivity, and there are circumstances, from my understanding, that if you have 30 lots or less, that you can seek a variance of not having to connect to adjoining tracts, undeveloped tracts. And so we're trying to get some consistency here and to see exactly what the basis of not having to do that as well is. Is it the amount of tracts that are developed? Is it what they're adjoining or how they're set up? Whether they're estate tracts, whether they're 1 acre, 2 acres. So at this time, I would turn it over to Mr. Robert Campbell, who's an engineer, will be speaking on behalf of in regards to the grade of the property.
Mr. Campbell, can you give us your name and address for the record, please?
Yes, ma'am. Robert Campbell, 7523 Taggart Lane, Knoxville, Tennessee, 37938. If it's okay, can we pull up the display? I've got some here, but it'd probably be easier to show the one with the road curving back to the right. Yes, ma'am. Thanks. So, in looking at this connection, and we understand it's a right-of-way, but eventually there's a potential for that right-of-way to be built, and to be built, it has to be built to your standards, and your standards require 12% grade. Right now, we're coming off at about a 16% grade. So there will have to be some grading that is done on that 50-foot wide strip. Now, 50 feet wide strip, when you've got a sidewalk and road, you've got about 6 or 7 feet on either side. If you've got more of a cut or fill than a 2-to-1, let's say you've got 3 or 4 feet, then all of a sudden you have the risk of encroaching on someone else's property or having to build a retaining wall. That cost falls to the developer, in this case on Mr. Williams' property. The way this road's laid out, and I'll agree but disagree with what Mark said, it's possible, but just because it's possible from an engineering standpoint doesn't mean it's the right thing to do, because there is a cost of money, and there is a more of a public benefit that we need to think about. One of the things on this, the way this road's laid out, the road is here, and there's approximately 8 to 10 feet of fill. This road is 8 to 10 feet above the natural ground as it comes out. Now, that doesn't sound like whatever, but remember, we're going to have lots that are going to front on this road potentially, which means there's about 10 feet, 8 to 10 feet of fill to be brought in on each one of these lots to level them off to make them buildable. You don't know, no one in this room wants a road up here staring at a 2-to-1 slope with their house looking into it. I mean, that's just not a very practical, whoops, sorry about that, practical thing to have happen. So if Mr. Williams does not have the fill material on site, guess what he gets to do? He gets to truck it in with large trucks on these roads that we're trying to make sure that we're keeping traffic at bay on, and create potentially other situations. We do a lot of subdivision design work. And one of the things that we have been trying to stress, and I applaud the town of Farragut, you all have been on the vanguard of that. I remember when we did Price Farms a long time ago now, it seems. The attempt there was to try to make things as natural as possible. The attempt was to try to match the land as much as possible to minimize disruption on the piece of property. We've basically introduced a huge disruption on this property that we now can't build this per what the land lets us build. We've introduced an unnatural design, whereas we might want to go do something a little different, disturb less ground, and be a little bit more environmentally sensitive to things. This does not allow us to do that. Also, when you look at the angle, we've basically, where that triangle part comes back, we've taken a lot of land away from Mr. Williams, because now he has to start his first lot down to be able to get enough length on the side lot lines to be able to start lots. Again, there is no compensation for that. There's no makeup for that because of the way the road has to be built in order to meet your regulations. My chief concern, besides all of the grading and the things and the costs that we've talked about, is this stub out's not been integrated really into any kind of plan about where it comes out, where it doesn't come out, how does this go across the property, where does it make its twists and turns. That's important. Let's suppose the only place that this can come out and still meet the criteria, we've got poor sight distance. What do we do then? And I don't know the answer to that until this property's developed, because I've had this constraint put on me about where this road has to start, and that potentially will influence where it has to end. So we have to worry about things like that. And I see the stub out. I understand we've tied into right-of-ways before, and I will promise you this, Mark, you'll get some phone calls. David, you'll get some phone calls, because somebody will have their favorite Bradford pears planted in that space, not realize that it's a right-of-way, and they'll call you all up and wonder why somebody's out there ripping all their landscaping up. I've had those before, so just get ready for them. But we need to understand that those constraints do not help us in developing the property effectively. And I believe, again, you all have been on the forefront of this, we are going to be doing some work here, grading work and other things that don't meet this property, just because there is some difference in elevation top to bottom that we would like to be able to use some a little bit more environmentally sensitive design techniques with. So I'll shut up and are open for questions. Or oh, okay, I'm sorry. Yeah, I've got a couple of exhibits showing the road, and they've got cross sections so you can see the road and see the natural ground and kind of see how that's tied together. And we kind of did a little quick road down to the bottom to see how that would work.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh, just,
yeah, and it's basically more of a serpentine road. I think we've got it on 2 different pages, so it may not be as obvious there, and I can certainly get that to you. But again, with a steeper grade, you have to take the road and do this to make sure you try to do it the way you can. And now we're having to start from a fixed point here. And when we end up at another point down there, where is that, and what other issues does that cause for the development and for exiting the development?
can I ask a question? So, Mr. Campbell, can you explain, just because I'm not familiar with any of this tonight, can you explain your relation to the Willow Grove developers? Are you, okay, so you're just a witness for Mr. Williams? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. in your professional opinion, a potential road here would, I guess theoretically, possibly incur more cost for Mr. Williams if a road would be put onto his property in the future, kind of a what if?
Cost is certainly one of those factors,
Okay.
but it may yield some parts of it unbuildable. It depends on what you have.
Parts of the property unbuildable?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Williams, was Mr. Campbell your only, I thought you had someone else you wanted to speak? Okay.
Ask Mr. Hunter to come up.
Yes, John Hunter, 520 West Summit Hill Drive, Suite 1202, Knoxville, Tennessee, 37902. Also a resident of the town of Farragut, live in Brixworth. Prior to that, lived in Old Stage Hills, which is subdivision that has had issues with roads previously, and also former chief traffic engineer for the city of Knoxville. So I've dealt with traffic issues for several years. When Mr. Williams called me, wanted me to take a look at this, first thing I did was look at, what's the trip generation for a subdivision of this size? What's the distribution look like? And that was prior to ever seeing a traffic impact study. So I was conservatively thinking, okay, based on just average rates, the subdivision will end up with 2,500 trips a day. And if you take even split of that, 50% to each entrance, you're looking at 1,250 trips out of each entrance. When you start talking about introducing another entrance on here, thanks, Mark, to the north, most of the traffic in the traffic impact study, 60% of it is taking Boyd Station to Virtue, and then 55% of it is continuing on up to the intersection with Kingston Pike. So I understand the idea of having distribution of the traffic, but if you distribute the traffic to Evans Road, where's it going to go? That traffic is just going to go follow the same general path that it was going before. It's going to go Evans to Virtue to Kingston Pike. So you're introducing potential, looking at the flow of the traffic. You wouldn't come back to Boyd Station to go back north. So you could have 60% of that side of the traffic going back to Evans Road. So that up to 1,250 trips a day. And if travel from Choteau comes through there, they find out that, hey, there's a 26-foot wide roadway here. It's been improved, shorter distance, potentially. That you could have that cut through traffic going by whatever development might happen on Mr. Williams' property. Having been a homeowner in Old Stage Hills and part of that homeowners association when Mcphee Road was widened and improved, people went straight across Old Stage Road there, drove through the neighborhood down to Kingston Pike because that was the shortest distance, quickest way to get to where they wanted to get to. I moved into the subdivision right after they closed 2 of the 3 entrances on Old Stage Road because of the cut-through traffic in that neighborhood. The residents were so tired of seeing traffic speeding through their neighborhood just as a cut-through. I can tell you when I was chief traffic engineer at the city of Knoxville, I regularly got calls from residents saying that they wanted to either do traffic calming in their neighborhood or close roads because of the cut-through traffic. I cannot remember a time that I got a phone call from somebody saying, hey, we want to add a road through our neighborhood so that people can cut through. So just looking at the overall traffic, I understand the thought of the distribution, but when you distribute the traffic here, if it goes to Evans Road, it's still going to end up on the two major roadways that the traffic impact study is showing that it's going to now, which is Mcphee Road or the majority of it to Virtue. And Evans Road at Virtue, with the amount of traffic that could potentially be there, you'd have to look at sight distance issues there as well. Haven't gone out and taken any measurements, but I know that traveling on that road, looking back from Evans Road, looking back to your left on Virtue, it's a little hard to see what's coming around that corner. So, yeah, that's the reason I was asked to come, just talk about those traffic issues.
Mr. Hunter, I have a few, I guess, questions and points to make.
Okay.
Because I agree with you. The last thing any of us want to do on the Planning Commission is create any more neighborhoods with cut-through traffic, because that's what was happening with Old Stage long ago. It was a shortcut. It was a direct, you were taking distance off of your trip to go through Old Stage Hills. So people were flying from Kingston Pike that didn't live in the neighborhood. They were flying off Kingston Pike onto Old Stage through that neighborhood. We're seeing it on Thornton Heights right now. We see it in Farragut View, and we saw it in Country Manor. And Country Manor and Thornton Heights have put in traffic calming speed humps, and Farragut View is working on that. And it's a frustration. Two of those neighborhoods I represent, and I don't want to create any more of that. This access is in the back of this neighborhood. For someone traveling from Choteau to travel onto Boyd Station, to cut into this neighborhood, to go all the way to the back of it, to cut through the neighborhood that could potentially come in, and that's a very big potential. I would assume that any neighborhood designer that's going to design on that piece of property would also design in a way that provides curvature and provides the ability to put more houses in, but does not provide a direct route straight to Evans Road for that particular reason, that they don't want to create a high-speed main thoroughfare. And our subdivision regulations work to make sure that we're not seeing these long stretches where people can just go 50 miles per hour in the middle of a neighborhood, because we actually see that now in our own neighborhoods. It's very frustrating. So we continue to cultivate and address our subdivision regulations to deal with that. We do have a fire code that we've adopted. More than 30 homes in a neighborhood requires a secondary access point. Now, we've also aligned our subdivision regulations to that. They are not required to connect here. You could have a subdivision with 30 homes, and they could ask for a variance from because it's 30 homes, and they would not have to have that connection. Mr. Williams could decide he wants to have it be estate-sized lots, and that connection does not have to be made. This is a planning commission trying to plan for, in a most logical sense, where to put a connection that does not create the situation that none of us want to see, but provides for that secondary access point that would be required if you want to do more than 30 homes in that particular area. So from my perspective, all of the power lies with Mr. Williams and what he wants to do with his property. This is an opportunity for him to say, do I want to do more than 30 lots? Because if I want to do more than 30 lots, I'm going to have a secondary access point. I don't want to do 30 lots. I might want to just do 4 lots, which would make all of us very happy. If this went to estate lots, we'd all cheer, because I don't need to see any more subdivisions built in the town of Farragut personally, but that is the property owner's right, and it's Mr. Williams' right as a property owner to decide what he wants to do with his property. We're trying to provide the visioning forward for how that's achieved for him. He has the final decision on, he owns the property. And nobody here is, I don't think anyone on the board is going out looking for people to come build more houses. So I think I disagree with your assessment that we're going to see a lot of traffic coming through that connection. That connection is located, and that's what we've been trying to do with our secondary access connections, is to make them very local to the very people that live in that area on either side, in that neighborhood and this neighborhood, and not encourage a lot of traffic coming through there. It's the secondary access point to me is more for emergency vehicles. We did have a very big issue in Sedgefield where the road basically imploded, and it was a, 20 feet deep stormwater pipe. And thankfully, they had a second access, because as you well know, that is an issue. So I don't want to create I am not interested in creating a cut-through traffic that is miserable for everyone living in those neighborhoods, because that's exactly what happens. It becomes a miserable existence. So those were my points.
I was, the traffic impact study itself actually stated that based on Knox County numbers for townhomes plus the equations for single-family homes, it was estimated that 2,791 trips per day would be generated by the subdivision itself. So I was just looking at part of the internal subdivision, 1,250, going out through that way. So I was not, there's potential for other, but I was just looking at that, kind of that northern piece of it going out.
That's about 125 homes. That's a lot of homes you think are going to feed through that area. That, I would be surprised to see that kind of activity in that location because of how far back in the neighborhood it is. Most people that live close to the front of the neighborhood are not going to go out that way. They will go out Boyd Station because it's more convenient. The traffic flow is certainly far more efficient. They're not going to be wanting to wander through two neighborhoods. And I guess I'm disagreeing with a little bit of your point as far as numbers go.
Understood. The point we had talked about previously, there is potential that they could go through there because they, you've got the curve at Virtue. Some people might want to avoid that, but it's as far as number of cut through from Chodo coming through, it's hard to say. People, it's kind of like water follows what they feel is the path of least resistance.
People do weird things.
So they
I
could go
agree.
through there. So
Yeah. And this is all on the supposition that Mr. Williams is going to build out to the extent that he would need that connection. All this is right now is trees and grass. And that's all it ever really has to be, depending upon what Mr. Williams' decisions are as far as the development of his property. As far as I can tell, he is in the driver's seat with that stub road. And at least, and we as a planning commission understand that within this subdivision, we would have to pave that portion of that road, that we would have to create that portion of the road on, because it's our right-of-way. But right now, all is trees and grass, and that's all it could ever be. It would be irresponsible for us not to provide for an access point for if that ever develops, for Mr. Williams to weigh all of his options. So I appreciate your time.
thank you.
Just going to introduce, got a report from Mr. Campbell and Mr. Hunter. Several copies.
Thank you.
I think we're missing one of the important things about Farragut. And I would like to respectfully disagree with the Vice Mayor's analysis, is this is about a community. This is not about providing for connectivity between the town subdivisions. Farragut was founded, and as much as, and Tom will tell you this, as much as Eddie Ford and I would butt heads on things, Eddie had a heart for the town being a set of neighborhoods who joined together to be a town. Farragut was never created to be a city. Farragut was created to be a series of neighborhoods who have their own identity and their own neighborhoods. One of the things that's made Farragut so valuable to homeowners is that the town has been able to have neighborhoods with cul-de-sacs where the kids could play in the street, where the kids could ride their bicycles, where we don't have cut-throughs. I know there's a disagreement on Grisby Chapel, but personally, I think the people sitting here would tell you it doesn't work for the people living in the neighborhoods to have cut-throughs and opportunities for people in other areas. And I just want to make sure we're clear. This neighborhood, the Grove, the traffic engineer, John Hunter, he's saying that's 1,250 trips per day just from that neighborhood. That has nothing to do with cut-through traffic that will certainly find that and use that because the road will be much easier to drive on than Virtue Road. And I did take an opportunity to call Darrell and ask him about Virtue Road improvements. And I don't think, and maybe you all know something I don't know, I don't think Virtue's on the plan to be improved in the next little bit.
Yes, it is.
Oh, it is? What
Yes.
year?
2025 is when we envision construction, and that certainly depends upon TPO funding, but we have funding for design, and usually when you have funding for design, correct? It usually means your foot is in the door for further funding for construction.
And that would take it all the way to
Boyd Station.
To the Grove?
Yeah, no, not to the Grove, to Boyd Station, where it turns onto Boyd Station. So Virtue Road where it meets Boyd Station.
At the 90?
Yes.
Okay, so again, Boyd Station won't be improved. And one of the things I did put in the...
Boyd Station will be improved. The developer is required to improve his portion, his half of Boyd Station where he fronts. And we have in the budget to improve our half.
Next year.
Yeah, next year, but elaborate, we're taking that to Mcphee, correct?
That improvement will go from, excuse me, from that entrance, or actually the whole frontage of the Grove at Boyd Station all the way down to Mcphee Road.
But we have a traffic study that the developer presented saying 60% of the traffic coming out of the new Grove is going toward Virtue. So we're backwards in the way we're doing it. And now we want to put a cut through our property, if we use our property, and dump 1,250 plus trips per day onto Evans Road. So if that intersection were to happen at our barn down there in the cemetery, you have no easy turn. I mean, 60% of those people, all the cut through are going to go to Virtue Road. The sight distance down there at Virtue Road turning into Kingston Pike, actually turning either way, is not acceptable, and no one, I don't think Mark or anybody would agree to accept that sight distance for any type of road down there. It is what it is, and we have to deal with it. But to add 1,250 more trips per day is just not what this town is about. This is about a drastic change from individual neighborhoods making up a town. Now, I have no issue with Boyd Station, the Grove at Boyd Station. They have two entrances. Your argument about the Planning Commission saying, well, if a line ruptured or something happens or emergency access, the Grove's got two entrances already. Got a great entrance on Mcphee. It's a wonderful entrance going to be. So I don't think that's a relevant issue. This entrance is not necessary. It doesn't help anybody at the Grove. It doesn't help anyone. It damages us. In order to put a road in there, we have to come down the hill, as Mr. Campbell said, and we have to build a snake-like road that turns and goes back up to Evans Road. That's enormously expensive. It's putting three turns, two almost 90-degree turns, into a road to touch back up to Evans Road. It just doesn't make good sense, and it's not good planning just because you can have enough time and energy. Plus, we can't lay out lots when you have a road going to the right down the hill and then directly turning a 90 back, coming along the wet water conveyance, and then turning another sharp 90 up to Evans Road. It doesn't make any sense. So what I'm saying is this is as much about safety as anything. This is about taking traffic from a new development, and I'm not against the new development, I'm a developer. I'm not against it. But I would never do something like this, and I give the Saddlebrook guys credit. They didn't want this either. They didn't ask for this. So they're not asking for it. They don't think it's necessary for their success. You've got two entrances, a great one on Mcphee. You're going to improve the one on Boyd Station. This is just not necessary, and what it creates is you have this, and respectfully, we all might not be here. I might come back 5-10 years from now, and I might have only people up here. I might have only people on the Planning Commission. They're not going to remember that what we just talked about. They're not going to remember that. There's going to be only people, and they're going to say, hey, there's a stub out there. We're obligated to connect to it. Or the town of Farragut could pass an ordinance that if there's a stub out, any new development must connect to it. You all could be gone. I don't think you all would do that. But if another group comes in, this interconnectivity wasn't before you guys. Another group could come in and say, you must connect to it. Then we're in bad shape. We've got us with a road running through us with over 1,250 trips per day. You got all the neighbors on Evans Road who thought they were buying on a quiet road, taking all this traffic from a development that had nothing to do with them. They didn't have anything to do with it. And they should not have to shoulder this burden. It's not the right thing to do. And one thing I'll say, and Mark knows this, and Tom certainly knows this, you know, I own where David's Carpets is. And I've had to abide by the town's rules. And I might argue and bicker a little bit, but I've never had a disagreement we couldn't work through, and we couldn't say when it was all over, both sides were reasonable and we worked through it. This is not reasonable. This is not good for the neighbors. This is like putting this albatross over our shoulders from now on. If we don't kill it now, a whole nother group could come in and say, just change a few words and say, if Williams develops his property, they wouldn't say Williams, they would say any property development that adjoins a stub out must connect. And then we're stuck. We have no choice. And then we end up with all the traffic on Evans Road. So I would respectfully say, this is the time to end something that makes no sense. If it makes no sense, you've got a professional engineer telling you his opinion is 1,250 trips per day. That should mean something. He didn't make that up.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. We have other people in public input that would probably like to be heard as well.
Can I ask
So-
him a question?
Go ahead, yeah.
So, Mr. Williams, you've mentioned cut through, people cutting through. Who are the people you're thinking will be cutting through on this road?
Mr. Hunter said that his 1,250 is just the residents of the new Grove, not including anyone that might find it later and add to that number.
And Mr. Myers, that's based off, I said 125 homes, because that's based off about 10 trips per day
Okay.
per home in a single-family residential
Okay.
neighborhood.
Thank you.
Is essentially what it generates.
Okay, thank you.
So that's
They'd all go
why
to
I
Evans.
came up with 125 homes.
Gotcha. All right.
I don't know.
So, Mr. Williams, you're not concerned that someone from Loudoun County might come up somehow and get through Boyd Station and cut through and go up to Evans and then divert you? You're just concerned that some of the residents within Willow Grove will cut through and go to Evans?
No, I'm concerned about both. I mean,
Okay. Because it doesn't seem very convenient to me. If I'm in Loudoun County, I think it would be pretty slow to go around circles in a neighborhood. There's a circle here and there's a circle there, and then to go through whatever circle you put on your property, and then to get on to Evans, which I think you all pointed out has a lot of vision issues, I
Yes.
think. So, which I think I'm concerned about. I know we all are. So I'm having a hard time kind of envisioning someone from Loudoun County finding this a convenient cut through. I would probably just go down Boyd Station up to Virtue and go.
but even if you disagree, and we agree to disagree, but you take your number, 1,250 from the Grove through our farm, through whatever we do, over to Evans is not fair. That's not the way to treat people on Evans Road and us, who we have no dog in this race for a development behind us. I mean, Virtue Road is a collector. We all know that. It's a collector, as it should be. So why don't we just keep the traffic on a collector road, as the professional engineer would say, is the best way to do it? We have the emergency access through the second entrance on the Grove. We're covered. This
Okay,
is a safety issue.
Are we ready for public input from
I think
Russ?
Russ to talk about.
Okay. Russ Rackley, can you give us your name and address for the record, please?
Yes, it's Russ Rackley, P.O. Box 30456,
Thank you.
37922. I'm the engineer that designed the Grove at Boyd Station. We've worked diligently all spring to get through concept plan, and in fact, preliminary plat has already been approved. I just wanted to, I felt compelled when I got a letter from, or when I got a copy of the letter from the attorney on the appeal, because his claims were making claims that I thought were unfounded. And I just wanted to set the record straight. And they're absolutely correct. We argued against a connection because that's 50 feet that we could use for lots and sell and make money. So, but the reality is in January 2018, the Farragut Planning Commission amended their subdivision regulations, making it a hard requirement, hard, not an option, requirement to stub out to undeveloped properties around the property being proposed to be developed. So there wasn't a lot of room for me to argue too hard. And so their first point, their first issue about it being too steep, and I think Mr. Campbell addressed this. Absolutely, it can be built. There won't be any retaining walls. If and when Mr. Williams' kids or grandkids or whomever develops this property, if it's anything like today, nobody wants a crawl space. They either want a basement or a slab. It's not a forested area, so moving massive amounts of dirt is what happens to create the pads and the yards that what people buy today. The road, the schematic design I did to meet your requirements is a 9% road. Yes, it curves to the left. You could curve it to the right. You could curve it any number of ways. And in fact, I don't understand all this talk about traffic on Evans when I don't even know how much frontage. Do you know how much frontage you have between the cemetery and the intersection on Evans?
Enough to do a road.
Well, I don't know what the minimum intersection spacing is over there, but you don't have to connect a road to Evans. The most obvious place when your property develops would be to put the intersection at the intersection of Turkey Creek Road where your driveway is right now. Well, you can get permits from TVA for a road. That's not a problem. There's a culvert under the road there, so it's not a sinkhole. It's not a natural depression. But either way, my point is, you're right. Your property has some very extreme issues, which makes it not very desirable to be developed. And so this stub out, although it cost us in a loss of this footage, the 50 feet in the area that we can't sell, but ultimately it's a requirement of the subdivision regulations, and I don't see how it's an issue for the Planning Commission to approve a plan meeting their requirements. I really don't understand what the appeal is on that. I'll take a couple of issues too with, and although I am a licensed engineer, but traffic engineering is not my expertise, but assuming 50% of the subdivision would go out the back of this neighborhood one day in 50, 60, 80, 100 years, whenever the Williams tract develops, or 10 years. I don't think that would occur. You're going to flow the path of least resistance, like somebody said, maybe it was you, like water, which would be to the primary collectors, which is where you'll make the most time to get to where you need to get to. The other point that Vice Mayor pointed out is interconnectivity doesn't mean a straight cut through. You want turns, you want stop signs, you want curves in the road. It is a third option or a fourth option for somebody in the event that the first two options aren't going to work for them that day, or there's utility construction, or there's you name it, something comes up. It's about having another option going out. So I just wanted to address the other 2 points. I think staff pointed out were kind of invalid. Obviously, you can build a sidewalk, the slope of a sidewalk per ADA can match the slope of the road if it's parallel with the road. It's the same for greenway trails. So that's not an issue. I think you were referencing some guidelines and recommendations from Tennessee Department of Environment and Conservation regarding recreational trails, but it's not ADA code. It's just guidelines and recommendations. Something else to note, somebody mentioned the secondary access for your property, and this will be good for you to know. In order to not have to put sprinklers and have more than 30 lots, the second access has to be greater than half the diagonal distance of the property being developed. So it's likely that even if you put an entrance on Evans and on Virtue, you still couldn't do more than 30 lots without having to put residential sprinklers in, because you wouldn't meet that measurement per the International Fire Code that the town of Farragut adopted. That's something to keep in mind. This would allow you that connection to get away from that. So again, I didn't want the stub out, but I also can't bear the cost of this project being delayed by some confusion over whether or not the Planning Commission's action was legal. And in my opinion, it was. They enforced their regulation. The subdivision regulations say thou shalt stub a right-of-way or a road out to undeveloped properties around the property you're subdividing. Doesn't mean it ever has to be used. But you have to provide for that per their regulations. So this argument really should have been had in January 2018 when the subregs were amended, making this a requirement instead of just a suggestion that they did in the past. That's really all I have. Again, they're not out for us directly, but I do see this as a potential to stall this project, and that is not something that we can bear. That would open up a whole nother situation. So, with that, I'll yield, and I thank y'all for your time.
Directly.
I'm happy to answer any questions too if anybody has them.
Do we have any more
I have
speakers?
some people that have signed up if you're ready for those.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I'll have a chance to kind of wrap up.
I'd like to hear from the residents, yes, yeah.
Okay, the first one is Brett Smith at 562 Stoneville Lane.
Mr. Smith, can you, for the record, your name and your address, and you've read the protocol? The
Remind me.
protocol for speaking protocol, just don't say anything nasty about
Oh, of course not.
anybody.
No.
That's basically our protocol.
That's fine, yeah.
Be nice, and we'll all be happy.
I kind of get the vibe starting out. We're totally good. So, Brett Smith, 562 Stoneville Lane, Farragut, Tennessee, 37934. Is that sufficient?
Yes.
Okay. I appreciate the time to talk. I appreciate actually Mark bringing up over here the medical issues. I'm a physician. I'm a specialist in rheumatology and immunology. And so when I look at this development here, this plan, is that there's no issue with the development. I moved into the farm with my wife and 3 kids over here about 6 years ago. And really, this is a safety issue to me, because I've walked Evans Road multiple times for many years. There are many times I've actually stopped, walked across the road, had to pull my kids aside because there were so many cars going so fast. There's no stop signs. There's 2 areas there where you cannot see anything, whether you're driving or walking. That Virtue Road with the improvements, as there is a plan for improvements, which I didn't know, so I appreciate you sharing that, but there are many times I just take a right there, and there are cars going 50, 55 miles an hour over that I've had to stop, and I'm surprised there's not more accidents on that road. That becomes an issue for me when my kids get old enough to drive, to take a right there, or if they do take a left, they get blindsided there too. From a safety issue too, I just think this is like prescribing medicines. What this is that if I prescribed, I presume anybody up here has accessed health care at some point in their lifetime. And it's like, Vice Mayor, respectfully disagree with the idea that it may not happen. That's a big deal. So if I tell you like, hey, this is your problem you asked me for, go ahead and take this, but there's a 20% chance that you're going to have a blood clot. With that blood clot, you actually could be hospitalized or you could die. Like, not many people are going to take that risk is the idea. And so the idea that it may never happen, It's kind of a big deal, I think. So because we have to view safety issues in the sense of what's effective as well, that road it just can't support that much traffic. Even if you disagree with the fact that it's 1,225 trips a day, it can't support a fraction of that traffic by driving that road consistently. I've been here for 6 years. My fellow homeowners have been there for probably longer than I have. I just don't think we can support that. And the volume of traffic there, it's noisy. And so the people that live up against that road, they didn't buy for that purpose. Sorry, they didn't. So, and the idea is that they need to defend their property rights as well. So maybe traffic and noise is not a part of their property rights, you might say. I would say that, you know what, part of this though is property rights too, is I think that the Williams own the property, they have a right to defend their property rights as well, so there's some respectful disagreement, but a threat to them is a threat to us all. We didn't move here to Farragut to be told what's going to run through us. We moved here for property rights, and the action of that, while it might be code per se, disagree, that's a property right issue to us. So I view it as a safety issue and a property right issue, and I disagree with the idea of putting that through at any point in time, and so I'm going to turn it over to you guys for any comment or to my fellow homeowners here.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Do we have the next one?
The you'll have to pronounce that last name. I have no idea. Sorry. The 12500 Ivy Lake Drive.
Yeah, I'm Kathy Ciociari. I live at 12500 Ivy Lake Drive. We back directly to Evans Road. We've lived in Farragut. We built in the farm at Willow Creek. We picked it because it is one of the last places in Farragut where we see sheep, we see lightning bugs, we see the donkeys. It's pastoral, and that is becoming rarer and rarer in Farragut. And respectfully, I disagree with it. It may never happen. With the rate of growth in Farragut, my kids are in the school. They're already overcrowded. Every year I see more and more subdivisions going in. So with respect that it may never happen, I hope Mr. Williams never sells his land. I love the sheep behind me. I love being able to sit in my backyard and enjoy the lightning bugs in the summer. I will not be able to do that. We purposely spent a lot of money in our backyard, as did our neighbors on Evans. It is busy. It does get loud sometimes. Even if it's not 1,250, 700 is going to be disturbing. We back up to the flat portion of Evans Road. You come after that hill where it expands, and the rate of traffic and how fast people, when they hit that straightaway, is ridiculous. Then you're going to add, at some point, the current plans have it ending in my backyard. 700 cars with noise, headlights. My daughter who's here will have no privacy in her bedroom. I won't either. It's going to make us and all of our neighbors who back to Evans Road, our backyards, unusable. We built in the farm at Willow Creek because they are larger lots. It is a nicer subdivision, and you're going to take that all away with adding traffic. On top of that, when I found out on Saturday that this was planned, I drove around Farragut. I couldn't find one neighborhood that dead ends into people's backyards, all along Turkey Creek. It's another neighborhood, it's a vacant lot, and you're proposing, because there's no way to back into our entrance at the farm of Willow Creek, to go and dead end a neighborhood into our yards. So safety's being covered, right? People fly down Evans, and I play chicken to take my kids to Farragut Intermediate or Farragut Middle School every morning, making that left from Evans onto Virtue. I don't know how many times I've had to floor it, because you look both ways, and I've almost gotten T-boned making that. So I appreciate that you guys are going to make improvements. Evans was never designed to be a cut-through, and with the construction on Virtue, it has become more so. So I respectfully, disagree that it may never happen, and you're directly impacting the 10 or more residents of the farm at Willow Creek and what we purposely built to be here in Farragut. That's all I've got.
John McCarthy, 603 Stoneville.
Oh, good evening. I'm John McCarthy at 603 Stoneville Lane, 37934. We've got a pretty good collection of our neighbors here, all very concerned about, the potential, just the potential of this road being built. But, and it comes down to, we've lived here for 5 years, and most of the residents over these years that I've talked to are for all the reasons that Brett and Kathy have addressed. It's the low density, it's a nice area to live in. And now we're seeing a more high density thing being put in here, and it'll directly affect our lives, especially like where Kathy lives. And that all these cars are coming down pointed right at her house. Every one of them. She's going to have to deal with noise, and her neighbors too. So we don't feel that this thing is needed. We don't feel it's required except by what the city says for connectivity, but it does not need to be in this location. I can't answer to the traffic engineers and stuff like that. I don't have that expertise. All I know is this will be a big disruption to our neighborhood and to everything around it. The biggest issue for us, in addition to how it's personally going to affect these people, is the safety along Evans Road. Evans Road is not a safe road. Coming out of our subdivision has been either going right or left. There's very limited visibility there. It is wider from our entrance at Cottage Stone down to Evans Road, which was a requirement when the subdivision was upgraded from bankruptcy, that you guys required it to be widened. So it's wide up to there. But headed up the hill towards Mcphee is extremely limited visibility. It's a racetrack. Kathy she is not exaggerating at all. Nightly noise, drag racing going on there. It's awful. So we're trying to make a left coming out of there, and where this thing potentially could be, now you're going to have, if they're making a left, 2 cars making a left into each other, in addition to limited visibility coming up the hill and speeding cars coming down. It doesn't portend well, and it just does not make sense. And it gets down to the issue that's been spoken to before, is that intersection between Evans Road and Virtue. It is the most unsafe intersection in Farragut, bar none. I defy anyone to show me one that's more dangerous than that. Making a left from Evans onto Virtue is a crapshoot, literally. Most of the people that I know in our subdivision, if they have kids when they become of age to drive, they refuse to let them go that direction, which sends everybody up to Mcphee, which that's not a big deal. It's a safe thing to do. But there's nothing that I know of in the Virtue Road project that makes it down to Evans Road to fix that intersection. There may be, but there's nothing that I know of.
That's the one we're talking about, Phase 2.
Is
in
that Phase 2
2025,
that you
yes.
mentioned about?
Straight down
Okay.
to Boyd Station,
Okay.
yes.
Because, and that's what Vice Mayor Poland and I talked about yesterday, the ideal thing is to cut down that hill so there's visibility. That's the big issue, is visibility. And it's truly amazing to me that nobody that I know of has been T-boned. If you don't get T-boned and you gotta floor it, you end up going across, hitting the rocks and ending up in Little Turkey Creek. Neither's a good end, that's not a good ending. So to add more traffic to this, it's already dangerous, and I know it's a potential, I know it's a right-of-way, but it's still a potential road. So we hear the maybes, the possibilities, and all this. We don't want any of that. We're unified. We got a large number of people that are here. None of us want even the potential of a road there. If you need a third access into this subdivision, put another one down on Boyd Station Road. It's the closest place to the Choto emergency vehicles. Do it down there. It does not need to connect to Evans Road. It's dangerous. That's all. Thank you for your time.
Peggy Burnett, I'm not sure if you're here to speak to this issue, or is it, okay.
I'm Peggy Burnett. I live at 1121 Graywood Drive, 37923. I know a lot of you. I'm a teacher, and a retired teacher. I'm 67 years old, and I've lived here all my life, born and raised here.
And she's one of my kids' favorite teachers,
I know.
I have to say. So
And-
this is
and I
very
taught-
awkward, Mrs.
Thank
Burnett.
you.
So good to see you, and
Well,
not necessarily these
and I taught
circumstances, but okay.
Sunday school, kindergarten, Sunday school to Drew Burnett. I know, Mr. Ford. I guess I'm telling you that to tell you I'm not here to cause trouble or to fuss about anything, but I just want to let you know I know other things besides teaching, even though that was my profession. I loved it. I loved your kids. I love you, Drew.
Mrs. Burnett, absolutely, absolutely.
But I did grow up here, and my dad worked at Oak Ridge. He commuted, and he also had his real estate license with A.J. Carpenter and Son on Broadway. And so Daddy saw all of this property. We bought land from my Aunt Aurelia Beeler Petrie on Smith Road. I grew up on Smith Road. So her property was developed into Royal Burkdale Road, the back of Fox Den. And they stubbed that off, still stubbed off. Okay, nobody could access Smith Road from there. By the way, my dad bought all the acreage he wanted at that time for $200 an acre, and that was before I was born. And then when he wanted to buy more from my Aunt Aurelia, it was $300 an acre, and he thought it was robbery, you know. But anyway, I'll get to the point. My dad was a real estate agent, and there was a big subdivision called Crestwood Hills, and it had all these accesses, and people didn't want to live there because people could drive through there and rob places and then get out of there real quick. And when Sedgefield was built, same thing, because then my husband and I, at that time we lived on Clover Fork in Country Manor, and at that time we had harder times. My husband and I owned the Gallery of Homes at that time, and we sold it to Gordon Smith in the 1990s. So people didn't want to live in Sedgefield because you come down Watt Road and you have all those accesses and all these semis, and everybody would run through Sedgefield, and you'd be showing houses and a big semi would come by. I mean, I'm just saying that to have access, I understand what you're saying about fire departments and things like that, but too many accesses can really make a neighborhood undesirable. I grew my family up on Clover Fork Drive in Country Manor, and Eddie Courtney, the football coach, lived there. So anytime, especially Bearden, if they played us, they would fly down that road 100 miles an hour, and they'd throw dead roadkill on his. They knew where he lived. You know, they'd throw roadkill on his porch and stuff. And so we went to Farragut and said, can we have some traffic calming? But everybody was cutting through Clover Fork. So you may not think that people use cutting through, but it's annoying, and they do. So I was just thinking, I mean, you know, I don't know anything about engineering. I just know what I've witnessed with subdivisions and with my husband's business. And I would think that maybe you could think about if it's a law that you have to stub off to private property, maybe you could just change that law for now. I mean, I'm an elementary school teacher. I'm not here to cause trouble, but I think there's a lot of concern. And I'm not here at the request of anybody, but I just thought, I've never spoken before at Farragut, and I love Farragut, and I love the beauty, and I don't love the concrete and all that either. I really don't, but, you know, you have to give and take. But I would think maybe you don't need to stub off something to private property every single time you have a subdivision. Thank you all for listening. Love y'all. Thank you.
The next speaker, Larry Doss, are you here for this item or citizen forum? Well, it's up to.
You're fine. That's fine with me. If it's fine with
talk
everyone
now,
else.
it's fine.
We're good.
While he's walking up there, I forgot to mention that I'm the president of the HOA for the farm at Willow Creek.
John McCarthy.
I represent 83 homes, John McCarthy.
Thank you.
My name's Larry Doss. I live at 12735 Evans Road. We've lived there for about 20-something years. Most of the land that's been changed out there is into estate lots. They're usually 5 acres or more. We've kept it that way. The only one that's left is Steve, that I know of, that hasn't been developed into 5-acre tracts. And that's what we planned on, and that's what we wanted to do. But also, I'm an engineer. I'm a civil engineer. I've done hundreds of subdivisions. And I will tell you that if you put a road from that subdivision, you will align a road going into Turkey Creek. Just like the engineer said, you go line that road to Turkey Creek. From that stub out, if you come through there.
Not Evans.
Not on Evans, at Turkey Creek, at Virtue.
And Boyd State, or Virtue.
That is where you will align that road going in.
Yeah.
And then you give that stub out up above Steve, and you go take the right-hand side of that subdivision, and every one of them is go out to Virtue Road that way. They will not go down to Boyd Station, ride over, go Virtue, go down to it, and turn right. They will simply come out of that subdivision, and from the very bottom of it, from the very entrance, because it's a cut-through. You said you don't want cut-throughs, you go get one. It's going to be a big one, and that subdivision, if he ever develops it, it's going to be a nightmare driving down to it. That's all I got. Thank you.
Just for clarity, he was talking about the, having an access on Evans Road, having what Mr. Rackley suggested, which would be the access point across from Turkey Creek Drive, where it comes into Virtue Road, which is actually a more sensible place to put an access point, particularly because Virtue Road will be, at some point, will be improved and line of sight and all that. So essentially what we're talking about is a proposal that's not before us. And the proposal not before us is envisioning an access point on Evans Road, which has never been established. It's a proposal that someone has brought to the people of the farm of Willow Creek, that they're very concerned about having an access point on Evans Road. When you look at that access point is really kind of a terrible place to put one, whereas putting it at Turkey Creek, in the intersection of Turkey Creek, makes some more sense. But the problem we're missing here is Mr. Williams is not required to do anything to his property. He can put it into estate lots if he wants to. He can put 30 homes on it and be done with it, and then there's no connection required. The power is in Mr. Williams, and we're debating their subdivision based on this imaginary subdivision put in the worst possible light that we don't even know is ever going to happen.
I just wanted to add. Yeah. Okay, start a timer.
This is his property.
Everybody here is upset about something that he has brought to you when the only person that can make that happen is him. When he decides to develop his property or he sells it to a developer is the only time ever in anyone's lifetime there'll be a road connection to Evans Road, is when he develops his property. I just wanted to point that out. Everybody's here and upset.
You're trying to make me the enemy, what you're doing?
Well, no, I'm just pointing it out. I'm just pointing it out.
Okay, everybody, this is not appropriate. Ma'am, if you haven't, I don't know if you're up next.
We have a procedure. We have a procedure.
She's the last one.
He told me I could
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Can
Sarah.
you announce her? I'm sorry.
Spelled out, the procedure was spelled out in the beginning. The reason that Mr. Rackley is able to speak more than once is because he represents the developer. They're actually the party that's being asked to deviate their plans. So it's not, he's not a citizen in here speaking in that way. This is a hearing to review the decision of the Planning Commission's decision on their development. So they're gonna get some latitude. I'm not even sure that if anybody'd asked me before the meeting, that I thought we should have citizen comment about an issue of this type of an appeal. But I think it's fine. This is the way we do things in the town of Farragut, and I think it's good. But everybody, let's just speak one at a time, please, so that we can hear what everybody has to say and not just let the thing get out of control, okay? We're not downtown Knoxville, you all. We're in the town of Farragut.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, the last speaker is Sarah Son. Is that what you're, I'm
just-
sorry, I can't read
One
your
other
last-
quick comment. Steve said that would affect his house. So if that's the case, then I know the lay of his land. The road would go back out to the left, then it would go to Evans Road. If he protects his home, which I don't think he'd go tear down his house to put in a subdivision. So it would go to the left to Evans. Now I understand what he's speaking of. Thank you.
Okay, Sarah, what's your last name?
I just have bad handwriting. Smith.
Smith, oh, well, that's.
562 Stoneville Lane.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
So, I was trying to not say a lot. Mr. Williams is actually my dad, and I live at the farm at Willow Creek. I have lived in Farragut since 1989 when my parents built there. I was trying not to say anything because mine's going to be purely emotional. We went to First Baptist Concord together. You look basically the same. Anyway, and
Finally hit
Miss
puberty at
Burnett
that height
also
with the
taught
beard.
me. Yeah, so I really, there's a lot of objective stuff that everybody else has talked about. And we have people that obviously help us while I work with our kids, and they absolutely have to go right to go to Mcphee. They cannot use Virtue Road at all. It's unsafe. And we've had that for the 6 years that we've lived there. My sister over there is the one who has the sheep, by the way, if you guys need a visual for the sheep person. And the donkey that's in timeout. But anyway, I really was trying not to bring an emotional plea, but I really want to tell you guys, you are planning for my family's property. And really what we are asking you to do is not do a what if. I understand that a man who doesn't plan fails every time. That's true. So plan well. Take the stub out and move it somewhere it actually makes sense. But we want you to plan. We are here because we want to help you plan. But planning through my family's land, you're talking about going through my family's house? And it just doesn't make sense. The Serpentine Road, the lights onto my neighbors. We live here because we want to have a safe place for our kids that are here. We brought our kids because you guys won't be here. And like someone else said, you won't be here in 10 years, 20 years, but my kids will be up here having to fight for this development. So I am here saying, please don't plan ahead for this 4-year-old Lila. Do what makes sense today. Take out the stub, please, and put it somewhere where it really will work. There are other places where it really works. So, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. This would be a good time for discussion from the board. I will say this, this stub, this road, this right-of-way is trees and grass right now. There's no plan. This connection isn't necessarily for the grove at Boyd Station. This connection is for Mr. Williams' property. No, it's not. That is what the intention is for. So I'm going to reiterate, the power is in the Williams family's hands. What they want to do with it is entirely. They looked at the location for where it would best stub into your property for future development for you. We have a subdivision regulations and our fire code. If you want more than 30 homes on your, okay, then you don't have to develop it. I'm not telling you to develop it. As a planning commission, we have to work within the current circumstances that we have.
But don't our ordinances, okay, so one more time.
Our subdivision
Our
regulations.
ordinances require a stub to undeveloped property.
Our
That is a-
subdivision
I'm sorry,
regulations do.
okay, thank you. And that would be something that we should be following. We don't, I'm looking at Tom here. Do we have the authority to go back and say we're not going to follow these regulations that we just adopted?
If you're-
And I would be curious to see what your thoughts would be.
Your subdivision regulations are supposed to be followed when you're approving subdivisions. They're supposed to be, if they're intended to be discretionary, they should say that in the subdivision regulations. If they're not intended to be discretionary, they're supposed to be followed, just like there's a lot of provisions in the subdivision regulations that are mandatory. You have to do it. I mean, if it says you're supposed to do it, you're supposed to do it. Now, whether you have the right to make a different judgment on this particular point that the planning condition did, I think you probably have the authority to do that. But you've got to remember that you have to come in here every week after week after week. And if you start not following the regulations that you adopt, then you're going to be asked every week you come in here, somebody's going to want you to not do what has been dictated by the board, the subdivision regulations are not an ordinance. They're adopted by the planning commission.
Right.
So they're not legislative.
Okay. That was my question. This is not a legislative matter.
No, so I think you can.
But may I ask for clarity? The appeal here is, did the planning commission do something wrong? And the planning commission didn't do anything wrong. The planning commission abided by its adopted subdivision regulations.
I think, let me.
Is that correct?
No, I think the question is, as I see it, this is a fairly unique situation. You don't see this very often, because it's not a law of general applicability that brings us here tonight. So, as I see this, you're reviewing what they did, and you can substitute your judgment for their judgment.
On
Now,
what matter? On what specific
on
matter?
on whatever they decide. But if you decide not to, all you have to sustain your position tonight is you have to have a rational basis, material evidence in the record to support the decision you make. And as I see it, from what I'm hearing, there's opinions all the way around on this issue. So it's not a matter of you're required to do something. You're required to review what the planning commission did and decide, do I agree with that or do I not agree with that? And then you make your decision based on that.
Follow up, Tom, on what planning, like what specifically are we?
The planning commission approved the concept plan with conditions.
With the stub out.
And one of the conditions was that there be this stub out, which, and with all due respect to everybody that's spoken, there may never be any road built anywhere. I said there may never be. So what we're doing is we're dictating what one developer can do on the basis of what somebody else may want to do sometime down the road that may affect the situation. That's a hard one for me.
And I guess the question comes back then, the next developer who doesn't want to stub because of the points that were made, that it's going to cost him money, right? Because the stub's going to. Let me finish. I appreciate your input. We're hearing you. But at the end of the day, the next developer that comes in that doesn't want to stub because of a loss of a lot could go out and get a crowd together and come and protest, and then we'd have to deal with that again as well, correct?
Yeah, I mean, that's the
And
nature
then we wouldn't be
of what
fair to
you
the
all
next
do.
developer or the previous developer who had to stub. Okay.
You need to try to be somewhat consistent about these things, especially if your regulations require it. Generally, if you're going to deviate from your regulations, you have to adopt a variance, which a variance is not supposed to be willy-nilly granted. It's supposed to be granted because it's very specific in a serious hardship on somebody that they didn't create.
Okay.
Right now, nobody's proposing to develop anything on Mr. Williams' property. He's just trying to protect himself looking forward, which I think we all admire him to do that. But we have to make decisions on the basis of the here and now and what's in front of you. It's a little hard to, we would never make a decision if you could come in and argue all the things that what if might happen.
I will make this one final point about Planning Commission. If we get into the practice of second-guessing what our Planning Commission is doing as a board, I've served on the Planning Commission since 2013, you have to be willing to attend every Planning Commission meeting, because what this stems from, this particular connection issue, stems from the years of listening to what has happened on Grigsby Chapel.
Absolutely.
And 15 to 19 to 25, whatever it is, single-access neighborhoods, and how awful it is for them because there is no ability to move around. We created that situation. So this connectivity comes from that. But if we are going to make it a practice at the board level for us to question everything that the Planning Commission does, if it's controversial, you have to be willing to put in the time to understand the history of why the town is trying to evolve the way they are. This is a secondary access. It is a proposed secondary access. If Mr. Williams wants to develop it, there is no harm to his property if for it to be sitting there. I think if he wants to develop it in the future, a developer is going to look at that and make decisions based on we can do this, we can do that. Developers do a lot these days. That it's quite amazing what they do. Frankly, I would be happy not to see this develop. I don't have a dog in that fight. Honestly, I could take a year off from not seeing any more neighborhoods come to us so we can all absorb what's coming down the pike and our staff could handle it. But I don't own these properties. This is simply grass and trees and an idea. No one knows what's going to happen with Mr. Williams' property, but we have to, as a planning commission, plan for these future issues, and we have subdivision regulations that tell us how to do it, and comprehensive land use plans and zoning ordinances and all that. So I'm going to leave it at that. Alderman Pinchuk, do you have any comments?
Yes. First of all, I travel Evans Road quite a bit. I live off of Old Stage Road, which is getting harder and harder every day to get out onto from my subdivision, so I know what you're talking about. My son lives off of Turkey Creek Road, so I'm back and forth. My grandchildren are there. I'm on that road all the time. So I understand where you're coming from with your concerns. If Mr. Williams develops his property, he's going to have two outlets. It's going to have to be Evans Road and Virtue Road. So there's going to be a lot of traffic coming out of your property, if it's ever developed, onto Evans Road. It's going to happen. Now, the other alternative is if you use the stub out and use that as a second entrance, you may be able to avoid any traffic at all on Evans Road. I'm just throwing out an option, but it comes to you. One, are you ever going to develop it? And two, how are you going to make the two entrances work for your subdivision, for your development? So, again, our regulations state that you have to have a stub out. We've created one. I think we probably all agree, we hope that maybe it never gets used, if it's going to be that kind of a burden to your property and to Evans Road and so forth. But we're doing what we've been asked to do, and I still think somewhere down the road, you're going to have to make a choice, or whoever develops your property is going to have to make a choice. Is there going to be an entrance to that property off of Evans Road, and how much traffic is that going to create for these people here in this room? So that's my comments, my thoughts. It's not an easy solution, but we're following what we feel we need to do at this point in time with that property, the Grove.
Alderman Burnett, do you have any more comments?
I mean, I have a lot of comments. I don't have them put together probably as well as I want. I don't have really, looking at everything that's been presented, I don't see that the Planning Commission did anything wrong. I hate that cutover. I mean, I hate that. I believe the top 50 to 60% of that neighborhood will go that way. I hate that. I don't think it's 1,200. I don't think it's anywhere close. I think 1,200's half of the neighborhood, right? So the lower half will obviously go south, in my opinion, and then go out the path of least resistance. But I do think that's a tremendous amount of traffic that goes out there. But see, again, I'm not at Planning Commission. So I don't know what Russ said, go here, try here, and this is the best because of these reasons. Like, we have to have a certain amount of faith in you all that you all said, hey, go there, and then this was the best route. I don't have a ton to add other than I live very close to here. Evans Road you would never walk your kids on Evans Road, ever. You wouldn't want a teenage driver driving on it, much less walking. And so the potential of more cars to Evans Road, respect, to all that have made it this far, got this decision this far, I hate it. I mean, I hate it. But do I think Planning Commission did something wrong? It's in our neighborhood regulations that we have stub outs. This is that stub out. Do I wish I could find another way so that we couldn't go that way? Yes, but that's not the question in front of me. The question in front of me is, did Planning Commission mess up or do something wrong? And they followed our guidelines. So that's a lot of thoughts, but I think that's where I'm at right now.
Alderman Meyer.
So I hate the fact that this particular project has brought out so many folks tonight to share their ideas, but yet I love it because I completely agree with the comments made tonight. My older daughter, Emma, is friends with Anna Comistek. I hear from the Comisteks often about the way Evans Road flows with the traffic, the speed. I'm concerned with my teenage daughter driving over to see the Comistek girl. So that's one of the reasons why I sit in this chair tonight, is because I've been concerned about vehicle speed in Farragut since I was elected. I'm also very concerned about school overcrowding as well. And so I don't want you in the audience or any residents to think that we're ignoring those issues, because they're very, very important issues. They're really going to shape what Farragut looks like here in the next 5 to 10 years. But as Alderman Burnett mentioned, the question in front of us tonight is not the safety of Evans Road. The question before us tonight is not school overcrowding. The issue before us tonight is, did the Planning Commission follow our town regulations, which, quite frankly, I don't want to be a part of a government that doesn't follow the regulations in which they implement. So I'm not comfortable making a comment or I guess going behind the Planning Commission when they are following our town regulations. I'm not comfortable with inconsistency. I think that the residents of Farragut deserve a consistent government. Well, the consistency is following the regulations in which we implement. This regulation requires a stub. I think the point is made very clearly. Mr. Williams, it's on you. It's on you with what you do with this stub. Not on anybody else in this room, you. But the question is, did the Planning Commission do something wrong? Absolutely not. They followed the regulations that our town has in place. Do you want a government that sits up here and thinks, well, gosh, this is the rule, but we're going to make a deviation for somebody who's special? Is that really what you want?
Just to save lives.
Well, now, again, the question isn't, before us tonight is not the safety of Evans Road, because I think it's extraordinarily dangerous, and my daughter drives on it as much as anybody else. And she's 17, and it scares the living bejubies out of me. And I recognize that. It's an extraordinary problem. The overcrowding in the schools is an extraordinary problem that we have, as a family, as a community, are going to have to sit down and talk about. But using this platform to come and say that this developer, who's already, how much money have you, I'm going to ask you how much money you spent on this development, to ask him to hold up his project because we want some kind of deviation from a regulation that is very much out there for people to read, I don't think I want to be a part of that. And I won't be a part of some kind of variation from a regulation that we're all supposed to follow. So I hope you hear my passion. I understand the problems with Evans Road. I got it. And maybe it's time for us to really do a deep dive into Evans Road like we are with Grigsby Chapel. Because Grigsby Chapel is a death trap waiting to happen. And Evans Road is horrible. So I agree with you. But I'm not going to be part of a government that doesn't consistently apply regulations for special situations. I'm not going to do that. I'm not sure you really want me to do that.
Change the regulation. There's something
Did you-
wrong with the regulation.
Okay.
The regulation stands before us tonight as it is written.
Is, we're going to give him a chance.
Yeah.
And I want to, when you're ready I want to say something before he starts. Because I want to, well, he goes downtown and appears in MPC like I do all the time. They give you there about 5 minutes, don't they? Something like that. They would have had this hearing over in 30 minutes, nothing flat. So try to keep, I know you're a lawyer, you like to talk just like I do. Let's keep it to a reasonable amount, please, sir, when you talk.
So, Mr. Forrester,
Okay.
you can have your final words, please.
All right, thanks. And I wish I could have been able to speak prior to kind of some of the conclusory remarks made by the council, but.
You know what you need to address.
Well,
That's a benefit for you, as I see it.
assuming decisions hadn't been made. And so that's the concern. There is a regulation, subdivision regulations, that references stub outs into adjacent property. It doesn't tell you what property, which is the most appropriate adjacent property, but I don't think anybody would disagree that where this stub out is has topographical issues based on the grade. Yeah, I mean, you can grade anything, you can build anything. It's just, what do you end up with? And I think it's important to notice with the topographical issues, when you look at the subdivision regulations, it specifically says that where very significant, you're relieved of a connectivity in abutting properties where very significant topographic issues not created by the design of the subdivision. So there is a way out. Here is an option to analyze this and look at this and say, look at the grade, look at the cut, look how the road's going to have to be done, look what it's going to end up doing, look, there's a way out. You're not violating your subdivision regulations because there's no dispute that where the grade is and what's going to have to be done. And the comment that repeatedly stating that this is all in Mr. Williams' control is completely, misplaced and misguided. The reference has been that it's all within his control, assuming he develops less than 30 lots. That he's not going to have to connect to this. That's not what y'all's ordinances say. The ordinances say that Mr. Williams can ask for a variance if he's developing less than 30 lots on his property. And as Mr. Hale, your attorney, just stated, that a variance is an extraordinary remedy. And they're hard to get, and they don't come by easily. And so the comment that it's in his control, and as long as he builds 30 or less lots, he's fine and there's no issue, it is not accurate. That is a decision that still has to come back to the Planning Commission for it to decide whether it thinks it warrants Mr. Williams not having to connect to this. And there's no threshold. 2 lots, Mr. Williams doing 2 lots, 3 lots, divides tracts for his children, they equal 5+ acres. Yeah, I mean, there's been reference to estate lots and not connected to estate lots, but that's not what the ordinance says. It doesn't give a threshold number. It just says if you do under 30, you have the right to request the permission to not have to connect to this, to not overbuild some road for some development you're not even trying to do. So again, subdividing this into 2 lots, 3 lots, technically compels him to join the abutting stub-out. Again, y'all can give the relief, but there's no guarantee that that's going to be given, especially when you apply the variance regulations or the procedures and authority for granting variances. And I bring this up because my understanding is that initially when this stub out was shown, it was shown to the west of Mr. Williams' tracks. And then that was relocated because it was determined that doesn't make sense to connect here. These probably aren't going to be developed further because they are estate lots, estate tracts. And so what is an estate tract? What meets that qualification? And so I turned this into an approval that was done, originally started in May 17, 2018, and this is for the Brass Lantern subdivision. And so that is a subdivision that consists of 30 lots. So a variance was requested to not have to tie in to the back, the adjoining properties that are at the back. And the rationale for granting the variance was because these tied into estate lots. There's no mention of this being likely developed, possibly developed in the future, or that it doesn't make sense to tie in. It's just that a variance was granted. And I want to introduce this to show it's in the record. And you may say that I'm making my own point for the Planning Commission's decision, but again, the issue is there is no definition of an estate lot, an estate tract, or what is the threshold if you have X number of acres, if you subdivide it only into 10 lots, 10 separate tracts, you're not going to have to connect. Again, 30 or less, you get permission. So in saying it's all in Mr. Williams' control, you know, I say that that's not accurate. I mean, I don't think it's unreasonable for somebody to divide 20 acres into 4 tracts for their children to live on the farm. But again, with that being said, he may be having to connect into this large right-of-way that's stubbed out there to provide for this additional traffic. I guess the comment too, not to argue with Mr. Hale, but about not having public input here today, I submit that it was completely appropriate because if you look back in the minutes, I don't even know the minutes, but the submittal for this initial concept plan that was heard in April, the concept plans did not show a stub-out connection here. So in reality, the public, the concerned citizens of this community would have never had any idea that it was even being considered or where it was being considered. And so if you're going to join it to an abutting property, submit why are you going to show it at a large tract that technically may be and possibly could be subdivided to provide tracts to the children, but by the regulations, Mr. Williams has to connect unless a variance granted, and that's no guarantee.
While you're looking, can I ask a question? Can we bring up the regulation, I don't know, David or Mark, maybe we need to take a break or whatever, but I would like to explore a little bit more about the comment you made about the, I'm going to say this word, I'm going to kill it. Don't make fun of me, Mrs. Burnett, but the topographical issues.
Topographical.
Topographical, thank you. So,
What was your point on Brass Lantern?
The fact that we had 30 acres and 30 lots, I'm sorry,
And a variance not to have a secondary access, I mean, not to have.
to join a budding
They
property.
just do the 30 lots, which is fire code and subdivision regulations.
So what was the variance given?
The variance was that it was less than the 30, it's in there.
It meets the threshold to ask for a variance for not to have to join an abutting property. And the basis, you got to have a basis to grant a variance. And it can't just be because it's less than 30 lots. The language is that 30 lots gets you the ability to come and ask for permission for the variance. The variance standards are not easy standards, as our state law says. And so the basis for granting that variance was that these tracts behind there are larger tracts, estate-sized tracts, and, should not be required to, connect here.
It's creek, there's a creek that made
creek
it
was
very
a big
difficult because
reason.
you'd have to
Creek.
build a bridge, and that
Yeah,
was
you're not
the biggest
stating
issue, was
everything.
that we couldn't see the cost of requiring anyone to connect back there. You weren't, it didn't make sense with the road. And to make this point, you can't we work with property owners all day long when we're trying to make things work for them. But you can't hold me to a future board's decisions. I can only be who I am and say support what I'm going to say, or however I'm going to work with property owners. And we try to find that medium to make sure we're being fair. And that comes with our elections and who we elect as our mayor, and is that mayor have a heart for the Farragut and is going to work with our property owners. That's been our tradition. But you can't hold me to a future, well, somebody else is going to make you do this. If he subdivided this into estate lots, we already have an example right down the road where he built in a road. It happened on Allen Kirby as well, where we required a public road to come in just for access. We didn't want to have to rebuild the road in 20 years. That's why we asked them to do a public right-of-way, but instead of calling it a private road. But it had to meet fire code standards so that you get equipment back there, because in a fire, everybody's going to want to get their fire equipment back there. So we have worked with property owners in the past to make sure that they're able to do what they want to do. I'm not here to cram, we're not here to cram houses down people's throat or make them do something they don't want to do with their property. So I think it's unfair for you to say, just because we work with them, some future board may not. That's a big may not.
And that's not what I'm saying. Your comment repeatedly was that it's all in Mr. Williams' control, and as long as he develops less than 30 acres, he'll never have to be required to 30 lots, he'll never be required to tie in. And that's not what the ordinance says.
Since you bring that up, let's just, for the record, let's see exactly what it says. This is the, subregs, where we talk about connectivity. A while ago, when I mentioned the use of variance, I was talking about a variance that was under the type of variance you and I know about, where you're actually varying an absolute requirement. And I don't know whether that law would apply to this or not. But what this says is the subdivision shall provide for both vehicular and pedestrian shared use path connectivity to abutting properties. The subdivision shall have more than one public street vehicular access into and out of the development. The Planning Commission may waive this requirement in cases where, 1, all of the surrounding properties are existing house lots of less than 1 acre, or 2, where very significant topographic issues not created by the design of the subdivision would effectively prohibit connection, or 3, the subdivision will have 30 or less dwelling units. I don't know that is, it sounds pretty mandatory to me, and that there are several ways that can be modified. And this is talking about the modification of the plat that is in front of us today. The plat that gets presented when the Williams property is developed is a totally different plat.
I don't disagree.
I mean, it doesn't.
But the comment.
It may not even be required. I mean, I think everybody's told you and told Mr. Williams that if you're going to divide this property into lots with 5-acre lots and give them to your children, that the town is not going to require a road to be built down across the property in that circumstance. The only way it would be required is if there was a multi-lot subdivision like we normally see, where there are lots of roads going through the subdivision.
And I guess if that can be affirmed on the record, I mean, but Tom, it's not your decision, it's not Mark's decision, it's the Planning Commission's.
And that happens every day when we meet in here. There are decisions made every day about things that are going on today that may affect what happens in the future. We have to rely at some point on the future decision makers to make decisions that make sense based on the facts at that time. We can't be making decisions about developments today on what somebody may do next door 15 years from now. We'd never be able to make a decision.
But I think in making the decision, there ought to be some determination where you have, similar to this 30-lot situation, most of the plans that I pulled, the concept plans that were required or I guess better yet, not required to stub out, or where they were not required to stub out, dealt with what was arbitrarily deemed to be an estate-sized tract. And, how do we get that? And as far as this affecting and slowing down the development, it has no bearing. All it would be is they just don't have to do the stub out. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't slow them down. They could build it exactly like it is or how it's been approved today. And if we were successful on this appeal, they could continue to build it the same.
Could I ask a couple more questions? So I guess this is directed at Mark. So do you think that there are topographic issues that are not created by the design of this particular plat that effectively prohibit a connection?
No, I don't think it meets that standard, because that says effectively prohibit a connection. And we've already seen in the evidence that you can put a street in there to meet the standards, so it can be done. There are topographic issues there, and there are in lots of places in the town. There are in this development. It's very common in this part of the country that you have topographic issues. Again, as I stated earlier, that area was looked at because you've got two 21-acre tracts. That's very large pieces of property. That could be developed in the future, and they looked at whether it was reasonable to do it and topographically feasible. And the designer for the developer demonstrated that, yes, you could do that. Now, where it comes out, whether it's on Virtue or whether it's on Evans, is really up to how that property, if it ever gets developed.
Thank you, Mark. So I'm sorry. Thank you. Just a second. So, Madam Vice Mayor, since you're on the Planning Commission, I'll ask you this too. Do you think that there's significant I can't say the word, topographic issue, thank you, not created by the design of the subdivision that would effectively prohibit connections? Do you think that there's any topographic issues that would prohibit a connection to the stub? And do you believe that the Planning Commission thoroughly vetted those?
I believe the Planning Commission looked at this and found that this would be the most logical place. I don't believe that there's topographic issues that prevent a connection from being made.
Okay.
Just looking at the evidence that was presented to us.
Okay. Thank you.
Could we get a clarification on what effective is? An effective.
Hey, let me suggest you finish your closing remarks.
We need to vote.
We're done taking evidence. We need to move on, and we've had ample opportunity to present evidence. We're not having any more evidence. That's not appropriate.
That's not fair, Tom. She just said something that's not true. We have to be able to answer that. We have a professional engineer who can tell you that what they just said is not right.
I would like to hear. I'm sorry.
We have an engineer that says that it can. So
he did not do a design to Evans Road. He doesn't know.
Okay, I'm going to.
I'm sorry. Can I ask to hear from the engineer one more time?
Mr. Campbell or
Mr.
Mr.
Campbell.
Rackley?
So you believe that there are topographic issues that are prohibiting a connection?
I believe that 16% in your regulation is 12%, and you actually prefer 10, makes this an extremely difficult thing, and it makes it a costly thing. And may I point out that it was just referenced here that the reason you didn't look at another access point was because it was a costly access point. So to me, it makes a little bit of difference if we're looking at cost in prohibiting an access point, but we're not using cost as a prohibitive factor in addition to topography in another access point, that we're really not being consistent. And I believe it comes back to where it is the effective use. Yes, and I said this in my opening remarks, just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it, and doesn't mean that it's an effective way to do it. I'm not disagreeing with what Mr. Rackley's done. I'm not disagreeing. We've put houses and developments in places that are that we've been able to do it because we've got huge pieces of equipment and the ability to do that. Does it meet the intent of what Farragut's trying to be, where you look at how you use your property in an effective way? And I'll say it doesn't. When I go from this grade to this grade, and I have to fill 8 to 10 feet where I've got a road here and the native grounds down here, doesn't make a lot of sense to me to make that. Yeah, we can do all kinds of stuff. We can do it. I mean, but is it topographically the right thing to do? And I would say, no, it's not. Let us come in, use the contours of the property, make it do right for whatever it is, and it may be one lot, it may be 70, I don't know. But let us use the property as the property is intended to be used, not force feed something just because we can. Just because we can is never really a great answer, in my opinion. So now that's not an engineering opinion. Well, it is an engineering opinion. We can do a lot of things, but just because we can doesn't make it a good decision.
Thank you.
I'd like to make this point. It says right here that if they go to decide to design this subdivision and they say, we have very significant topographic issues connecting into this, they have a variance right.
I was going to ask you, wouldn't that be applicable to Mr. Williams at some point if you?
If they can
Okay.
effectively,
Okay.
if they believe that and they demonstrate that, there's an option here.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for
So,
indulging me and helping me make a decision. Appreciate it.
With discussion, a proper motion on the floor that has been seconded, and since this is an appeal item, I will ask the town, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, did you have
Again,
more
are
to
we
say?
approving it or denying it?
Take a vote.
What's the verbiage of the motion? Could you please repeat? I'm sorry. So I know
The
how to vote.
motion was to deny the appeal of the planning commission's approval of the concept plan for the Grove at Boyd Station subdivision.
So if we're voting yes, we're denying.
Yes, if
Okay.
you're voting yes, you're
Okay,
denying.
thank you.
So, Mark, can you take a roll call vote, please?
Okay.
Hey, Mark, can you specifically tell me one more time what we are approving or denying specifically?
Well, I think what the question is whether, as I see it, whether you all feel that the planning commission basically followed our plan and the regulations that we have in place in this matter by stubbing the road, which is the part that they're appealing into this property.
So the motion again is the motion that's on the floor is to deny the appeal of the planning commission's approval. So if you said yes, you'd be denying their appeal.
Hang on a minute.
Yep.
Let's be clear. When we started out, I explained this is a de novo hearing. We are looking at what the planning commission looked at, but we're deciding independently whether to approve or disapprove the concept plan based on the input that we've heard here. Is there material evidence? If you agree with the planning commission, then you vote to approve. That would mean you'd vote against denying the appeal.
Vote to deny.
Agree with them on what? Everything in the concept plan?
Well, on this one issue, this is what they've appealed, is the concept plan. If the concept plan is not approved as presented, then it'll have to be modified. So that would, I mean, not everything gets thrown out, but the certain things would. So, I mean, I think, but if you don't agree with the planning commission, then you vote the other way.
But don't agree what? Don't agree that I like where they put the stub, or don't
Well,
agree
that's
that they
that's the
require
thing.
a
That's
stub?
the issue that has been raised. You've not been asked to look at all the other aspects of the concept plan, because the concept plan, in all other respects, as far as everybody else is concerned, has been approved. Nobody's contested those other aspects. So that's the only issue that has been raised. It's whether they did the right thing, and what you're looking at is there material evidence that's in front of you that supports either yes, it's appropriate to have the stub in, or no, it's not appropriate to have the stub in. As long as you have material evidence to support that, either way you go, and, I mean, there's been all kind of evidence presented here. You could,
But could you reread the motion one more time to make sure I know how to?
The motion is to deny
Okay.
the appeal of the Planning Commission's approval.
Okay, thank you. All right.
So are we
Yeah,
ready to
ready.
vote? All right.
Want me
Mark,
to
can
read
you
it
do a
out?
Roll
Okay.
call vote, please.
Alderman Burnett,
You can pass. Or you can recuse. You have options.
do you want me to come back to you?
You want to pass?
Wait a minute, no.
Yeah, you can.
Are you passing, abstaining, or voting?
I don't feel like I have enough information to make this choice, me personally. I know what I don't like about this, but I also know there's a tremendous amount of work put in Planning Commission. They've approved the concept plan. Feel like this is coming at it the wrong way. I do not like this connection at all and hate going across that property, but I don't think they did it wrong. I mean, I don't think they did it wrong. I don't think they did anything wrong, but I really don't like it. So at this point, I'm going to pass.
Okay, Alderman Meyer,
Yes.
Alderman Pinchuk,
Yes.
Yes.
and the motion
Come back to
passed.
Burnett.
Oh, you want me to come back to you, Alderman
Pass you.
Burnett? Just pass, okay.
Abstain then?
Abstain.
Abstain,
That'd be the proper
okay, Alderman Burnett abstain.
Okay.
Do I need to? Shows the appeal, let the record show the appeal of the Planning Commission's approval of the concept plan has been denied by a vote of 3-0 with 1 abstention. I appreciate what you just went through. It's a struggle. Which is what's so hard about you guys at the board level and planning commission. Yeah, yeah. Well, I know, but the reason it was put here was because there are 2 different lots. So that's why the connection is
I mean, we all
the whole
agree.
thing is unique. The whole situation is unique. I mean, it's just, the law was never.
But I think that's where the planning.
All right,
commission-
are we, okay, everybody.
Items on the agenda.
We still got a little bit more of the meeting to go. I'm sorry, I lost my page. I don't know what I'm doing. All right, the next item on the agenda is Town Administrator's Report.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Tonight, we've been working diligently on a stormwater project around town. That stormwater project has about a $700,000 project.
Excuse me.
Order.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
We're out of here.
Thank you.
That stormwater project is about a $700,000 project. We're just about a third of the way through it right now, but we wanted to show you a great video that our staff put together to talk through and show you the process that they're working on for this stormwater project. You know that video? And this is being done over in the Village Green subdivision, this piece of it right now.
All right, what we have here is corrugated metal pipe under the streets and everything for storm drains. And over a period of time, they have deteriorated where they're collapsing. So what we do is install CIPP, which is cured in place pipe. The other option is to rip the street up, put a new pipe in and cover it up. And then later on, down the road, it's going to do the same thing. But we'll take and shoot a liner through this, which is saturated with styrene. Bring the head pressure up, and it swells out to the diameter of the pipe. And depending on the thickness, which is, the engineer has to say how thick it is. We bring the water up to 180 to 200 degrees and what we call cook it off. And it makes a solid pipe inside there, which is better than the old corrugated metal. After it cures out, we cool it down, cut the ends out, and you have new pipe. You have a corner, it roads out, you don't have to mess with any utilities. So, modern science.
So the point of that video is, as you saw cars running through there while they were repairing that pipe, that couldn't happen if we were actually digging out the road to dig out the pipe. This new technology, that's new, I say, it's been around a decade or so, but it actually is able to go in, heat up that material and make it as hard as a rock to go around our stormwater pipes and last for a long, long time. So it saves us time, it saves us a lot of money by doing that process without tearing up our roads, and makes it a lot more efficient for our residents who are in the area too. So they've been working on that diligently. I think they're going to be, what do you think, Brandon, done in the next month or two probably?
Correct, yeah.
Yep. So a couple months they'll be done with that project, and we'll move on to the next one. So anyway, I just wanted to share that with the board tonight, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Just one quick question. When you say that project, that's just one stormwater pipe of the 13 we have?
13 or 12? I can't remember, Brandon. How many?
Okay.
We ended up approving 11 locations.
Okay.
And they completed 6 or 7 of them. A couple are in process right now.
Okay. Thank you. So, next on our agenda, Town Attorney's Report.
Well, it was an exciting night to come back to in-person meetings.
And run my first in-person meeting.
I know, I was going to say
Yay, me!
that. But I really don't have anything. We hadn't been sued lately, so.
That's refreshing.
I think we don't need to have an executive session tonight, so you're all shed of me for a while.
All right, the next agenda item we have is citizen forums. I know Mr. Doss wants to speak. You understand the protocol, right? Mr. Doss, you did fine before. So just your name and your address.
Yes, ma'am.
And you have 5 minutes.
Won't take that long. Larry Doss, 12735 Evans Road. The only thing that we were asking, that's my wife Debbie, we're asking for a 3-way stop sign at Old Stage and Mcphee. Old Stage and Mcphee. You come down it all the time. You get down there, you cannot make a left-hand turn on Old Stage. And
You know, we have looked at that. We've done traffic studies on that. Of course, right now with all of the Virtue Road traffic detour, that's been the struggle, because I know that they've done traffic counts and a lot of the traffic turns right. So that was kind of like that factor of, do we need a light there? Because 3-way stops can be tricky. Is that what we looked at? I thought we looked at a light there.
Yes, ma'am. We actually did a study there, and we were looking at a light. We also looked at the 3-way stop as well. I think in both scenarios, it made the conditions not necessarily better for the traffic flow in that area. So it didn't warrant something at the time. But that was been 2 years ago now, probably 3 years ago that we looked at that. So, you know, if it's something the board wants us to look at again, we'd be happy to go out and do more counts.
I don't know the timing on it, but looking at what we've got coming in, I think we'd be crazy not to.
if you did a 3-way stop sign, all you'd have to do is put up 3 stop signs and change your paint.
Yeah.
Very cheap. And it would work. Once Virtue gets back into play, I think we'll be okay. It won't be as bad. Of course, when the new growth comes in, then you may want to go back and visit it. But we try to go left to go to church, and it's an impossibility between about 3 and 6 o'clock. It's an impossibility. So I wouldn't ask. The stop sign would just be fairly easy to do, be a paint job on the road, add a little bit more space to the loading for the left-hand turn, and you're done. And it would suffice until Virtue Road opens up, I believe, but up to you guys.
And I just want to give you the background for the concern with the 3-way stop, because it probably meets warrants right now with all the traffic being diverted from Virtue Road. When you have a 3-way stop and a person gets to that intersection and consistently does not see somebody that he has to stop for, they start rolling through or just driving through that stop sign.
Yes, ma'am.
So that becomes the concern. Are we creating an environment? I wonder, it certainly needs to be looked at again, but that's the concern when you put in a three-way stop sign is, are we creating a more dangerous situation than we already have? So I just want to give you that for background
That's
when you
fine.
just start
We-
thinking
yes,
about
ma'am.
them.
So
Yeah.
go-
I think
question,
it might
could-
slow traffic down on McPhee though,
Yeah.
too, having that
Well,
three-way stop. So
yeah.
I'm for looking into it again.
Yes,
It's
I
been
am
2
too.
years.
Couldn't we do a
I'm very
temporary
supportive.
stoplight or something during construction?
I don't,
I don't know if any temporary lights are a good idea, unless they've been thought of through the construction. I mean, we're already halfway through that construction
Is it? Okay.
process. We're going to be done next March with the whole thing. And actually, traffic may change a little bit when we switch direction and have the roundabout from Brookmere heading south now to Virtue. So we'll have to wait and see. But
could
I'll
look
certainly
at,
get with Daryl next week,
okay.
and we'll talk
Okay.
about it and see what we can do in the area.
I didn't mean to cause a problem. It's just,
no, it's.
people go down there, take a right, go up to the playground, to the play school, turn around, and come back.
Yep.
And now we're cut through for Lenore City because they come down Old Stage, and so during those times, it's hectic. But thank you.
Thank you.
Mr.
Thank you.
Doss, I appreciate your hanging out. All right, is that it? Can we adjourn this meeting?
You can smack that gavel
the
just as
time
loud
is,
as you want.
Time is 8:55. That meeting's over. I have my paper towel. It's a little bit better.
You still playing tennis?
You know,
Yeah, that's for
played
sure.
last night, and I played with these guys that are fairly good. I can't run, and so,
Knee problems?
and I can't react. This knee right here just is not stable at all. If I turn and try to go, I can't really. You know, if I'm running forward, I can sort of get there, but if I'm running out the back, I can turn quickly and twist and stuff. And I've been playing pretty good.